the President of the United States.
The president will address the nation tonight, even as he faces a vote tomorrow on whether or not to remove him from office. You're looking live at the United States Capitol building, where President Trump will make his annual State of the Union address at 9 o'clock Eastern Time. We are in Statuary Hall, where the media is gathered, and soon we'll see senators, members of the president's cabinet, and even Supreme Court justices pass through here on the way to the House chamber. Welcome to live coverage from the Washington Post. I'm Libby Casey. It was less than 2 months ago that President Trump was impeached in that very House chamber. Now, his acquittal in the Senate is all but certain tomorrow, but this marks a historic moment in his presidency. My colleague Rhonda Colvin has been covering the impeachment from day one. Rhonda, what does it mean to have this all happening at once? The president had hoped to have this impeachment process over before tonight's address.
Yeah, this is really an astonishing collision of events. You have tomorrow, this is the eve, less than 24 hours until the Senate votes on potential acquittal. That's what we think this is going. And it's just phenomenal. You know, with the Clinton impeachment, he did have to give a State of the Union during that time, but it was weeks before the vote. This is less than 24 hours, so this is really, really interesting, and I know everyone here is anticipating what the president is going to say. You know, he may want to talk on the economy, how the job growth is growing, but, you know, everybody's thinking about the impeachment right now.
And of course, the backdrop of this, too, is that so much of the country's focus has been on Iowa, as we've seen people start to go to gather in the caucuses to begin the process of choosing a Democratic nominee to go against President Trump in just a few months' time. Right. So, Rhonda, you know, we've been watching to see how senators would weigh in over the last couple of days. I know you've been following closely as they've given their floor speeches to announce their positions on whether to acquit. Who have you been watching closely?
Well, we were looking at Senator Collins of Maine. She's in a tough re-election situation, and we were wondering which way she was going to go. She announced today that she is going to vote to acquit. We were also watching Joe Manchin of West Virginia, a moderate Democrat, and he has made comments yesterday. He made comments about censoring. But yeah, we've been watching people, seeing which way they might go. Doug Collins is another one that we aren't quite sure which way he's going to go. He's a Democrat from Alabama, again, in a tough re-election situation. So yeah, we're still waiting to see what way those senators are going to go, but we really do know the outcome tomorrow.
Acquittal is... Right. They have the votes to acquit the president. But it has been especially fascinating to watch someone like Senator Collins, because she did vote to call witnesses. Democrats did not get enough Republicans to cross over with them. But Senator Collins announced just today on the floor how she plans to vote in terms of acquittal. And as Rhonda pointed out, she does plan to vote to acquit. Let's listen to her justify that.
I do not believe that the House has met its burden of showing that the president's conduct, however flawed, warrants the extreme step of immediate removal from office. Nor does the record support the assertion by the House managers that the president must not remain in office one moment longer. The fact that the House delayed transmitting the articles of impeachment to the Senate for 33 days undercuts this argument. The House managers described impeachment as a last resort for the Congress. In this case, however, the House chose to skip the basic steps of judicial adjudication and instead leapt straight to impeachment as the first resort. Therefore, I will vote to acquit.
We are here with our colleague, Mike DeBonis, who covers the Hill. Mike, with that Collins statement today, are you surprised at all that she voted for witnesses yet is going to vote for acquittal tomorrow?
I don't think anyone was terribly surprised at how this ended up. I think a lot of people were sort of reminded of the Brett Kavanaugh confirmation of the process that she went through there, where she did, you know, at least create the impression that she was open to being convinced to break with her party, but in the end, she didn't. This seemed to be, it's certainly the Democratic activists, it seemed to be sort of a replay of that playbook. You know, I think if you were monitoring her comments through this process. She was critical of the House throughout. She thought that they had moved too fast. She had made various comments indicating that she wasn't going to be inclined to convict the president. I think that, obviously she has a very carefully tended image as a moderate. I think she can go to her voters and say, listen, I wanted to hear more. I did believe that what the president did was inappropriate, but at the end of the day, impeachment is the gravest constitutional remedy. I didn't see the necessary predicate for that. I think that was kind of where she was headed from the beginning.
What have you been hearing from your sources around the Hill today about the anticipation for the president to either say something about impeachment or stay away from it?
I think no one expects him to stay away from it entirely. I think he's made some suggestions to fellow Republicans that he's going to sort of stay away from that, but like most things with the president, we'll believe it when we see it. I think that people are certainly prepared for him to take some sort of victory lap, to make some declaration of triumph here. It may be subtle, it may not be subtle. He's not usually a subtle guy, but the message that we've been getting from the White House all day today is that he wants to stay focused on his accomplishments and what his plans are for the future, making a case, implicitly for another 4 years. And that's what we've been led to believe is coming.
Mike, we've heard from some moderate Republicans that they're displeased with the president. They think he did do something wrong. How important is it that the president stays sort of sober tonight and doesn't lash out and doesn't make a mockery either of the process or engage in some sort of partisanship that might actually turn off those moderate Republicans or moderate Democrats?
Well, let's be honest. I don't think there's anything he could say or do tonight short of, I hesitate to even suggest that would actually change the outcome tomorrow. You need 20 senators to change their minds at this point to remove him from office.
It's more about putting them in a more awkward position,
Listen,
right?
They've been put in awkward positions constantly for the last 3 to 5 years at this point. There's really nothing at this point that is really going to surprise any Republican if he were to, attack Speaker Pelosi from the podium. I don't know that
with her standing right behind him.
With her standing right behind him. I don't know that anyone would be necessarily surprised. It would be shocking. It would be unprecedented, but it's President Trump. Republican lawmakers have shown again and again and again that they will wag their finger, perhaps maybe send a critical tweet, but they are not going to, at the end of the day, do anything to challenge his authority or his, anything fundamentally about his ability to do the job as president.
Mike DeBonis, thank you so much. We were talking about Senator Joe Manchin a few moments ago. He is calling for a censure of the president. Let's listen to him talk about that.
Never before in the history of our republic has there been a purely partisan impeachment vote of a president. Removing this president at this time would not only further divide our deeply divided nation, but also further poison our already toxic political atmosphere. In weighing these thoughts and of all the arguments brought forward in the case, I must be realistic. I see no path to the 67 votes required to impeach President Trump and haven't since this trial started. However, I do believe a bipartisan majority of this body would vote to censure President Trump for his actions in this manner. Censure would allow this body to unite across party lines and as an equal branch of government to formally denounce the president's actions and hold him accountable. His behavior cannot go unchecked by the Senate, and censure would allow a bipartisan statement condemning his unacceptable behavior in the strongest terms.
We now have with us Representative Eric Swalwell of California. Representative Swalwell, you were on two of the committees, Intelligence and Judiciary, two of the three committees investigating the president and the impeachment. I think a lot of people at home want to know, how does a House Democrat come in today and listen to the president's speech when you all voted to impeach him?
Yeah, well, he should be removed for the corrupt way that he put his own interests over our national security. If he's acquitted tomorrow, though, he's got a job to do for the rest of the year. We've got a job to do. So where we can work with him on transportation and infrastructure, lowering the cost of prescription drugs, even take him up on his word that he can be the president to stand up against the NRA and get background checks, we should try to do that. And I think we have a record of doing that. Even during impeachment, we passed the U.S., Mexico, Canada trade agreement.
Is there anything specific you want to hear from him today?
Yes, I do want to hear more about this, promises made, promises kept theme, because if you're paying more for prescription drugs, if you're ducking under your desk as a kid in a mass shooter drill, if you're paying a lot for student loans, you don't see it as promises made, promises kept. You see it as promises made, promises forgotten. And so what's he going to do to work with us to address those issues?
Congressman, some of the Republicans who are moderates who are voting to acquit the president have said they're very frustrated with the partisanship in Washington. I'm thinking of Lisa Murkowski.
Yeah.
She really blamed the process, blamed the fights among parties. You're wearing an ERA yes pin.
Yeah.
Senator Murkowski, the day after she said she was not going to vote for witnesses, was touting her work on the Equal Rights Amendment, and she's also this week been touting bipartisan work on helping victims of hate crimes. How do you work in a bipartisan manner if you're being slammed and criticized by those same Republicans in this moment?
Because we have to put our constituents' issues above any disagreements. This is a democracy still, and so we don't overthrow governments, by violence or force. We change government at the ballot box, and so we can disagree, work together where we can, and then in November, hopefully motivate voters from both parties to go with a change agenda. But we have to. That's why we worked to pass that trade agreement. I think we made it better because we involved ourselves in it, and that's how I'm going to continue to focus.
Is that going to get harder now with the impeachment?
I don't think so. I think the president, he wanted to be the infrastructure president, and he's got a year left in his term, and he should go back to the table with Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer. He walked away, of course, in that stunt at the Oval Office, and see what we can do to invest in infrastructure. I will work to support that. I'll stand up today if he says he wants to do that again.
Okay, Iowa. So what do you make of what happened there? You were running for president just a little while ago.
Yeah, I was born in Iowa.
So what do you make of the problems getting the results?
It's heartbreaking to see that happen. They take so much pride in being the first in the nation. The best thing they can do is be forthcoming about what happened and assure us that the result is correct. But right now it looks like Mayor Buttigieg will come up on top. And congratulations to him. But this moves on. I think this will be a one-week story. Next week we'll all be talking about who wins the New Hampshire primary, what's going to happen in Nevada, South Carolina, California in the Super Tuesday.
So as a native-born Iowan, do you worry that the caucus may lose validity, that Iowa may lose out in the future?
I do, and I hope that they can still be first in the nation. But I think there's going to have to be certainly some changes.
All right, thank you,
of course,
Representative Smallwell.
All right, so the Iowa caucus, as we have talked about, last night, Rhonda, I was in Iowa, and we were all waiting for the results to come in, and it was frankly shocking that the Iowa Democratic Party was not able to provide them because of this issue in the transmission of the data, this problem with this app, and then the phone lines were just clogged up. People couldn't report from the precincts what happened. We finally did get partial results today. So with 62% of precincts reporting, let's go look at how the Iowa caucus is sort of shaking out and who's in the lead at this point. Pete Buttigieg, 26.9%. Bernie Sanders behind him, not by much, Rhonda, 25.1%. You see then a bit of a gap, and then next third, Elizabeth Warren, 18.3%. Joe Biden, 15.6%, Amy Klobuchar, 12.6%. It is important to look at those other numbers right below that. That's one of the calculations, the way that they're showing sort of who came out ahead. And you see Pete Buttigieg there, really the one who is in the lead at this point. Now, it's important to remember only 62% of precincts reporting. This was an incredibly frustrating night for so many volunteers on campaigns, so many people who have been working for months to try to make sure their candidate had a strong showing last night. And what was fascinating, Rhonda, is so many of the candidates declared win, right? They declared that this was a victorious moment for them. There are usually 3 tickets out of Iowa, they say, to get on to the next phase, but it seems like they're going to be a lot more than that, as we saw all 5 of those candidates saying they're moving on to New Hampshire feeling good, but we'll watch and see how the numbers actually play out.
Right. And it was interesting also to see how early they came out to sort of declare victory, at least give a speech to their supporters without knowing any information. So that was pretty stunning. But yeah, all eyes now on New Hampshire.
And you mentioned victory speeches. Well, Pete Buttigieg gave a victory speech last night before there were any numbers announced, and our colleagues James Homan pointed out, this will go down in history as either a strong speech that projected where things were going, or it could be seen as like the Howard Dean scream of an incredibly awkward moment of someone declaring victory who was not victorious. Well, Pete Buttigieg doubled down today and declared victory again. Let's listen to part of that speech.
It validates the idea that we can expand a coalition not only unified around who it is we're against, but around what it is that we're for. And it validates for a kid somewhere in a community wondering if he belongs or she belongs or they belong in their own family. That if you believe in yourself and your country, there's a lot backing up that belief.
speaking today in what looked to be an emotional moment. He is the first openly gay presidential candidate. You saw there in front of the seal of the state of New Hampshire. So we've already moved on to New Hampshire to a large degree, Rhonda.
Right, already moved on, and that usually happens, but it is, again, stunning to happen when we still don't have all the detail, all the data. So, it looks like apparently it was Pete Buttigieg's night. I know that when I was in Iowa for the state fair in August, a lot of people were excited by him, that he's young, he was sort of Obama-esque, and a lot of people gravitated toward that. So I don't know if it's a terrible surprise that he is sort of in the lead when we still don't have all of the reporting yet, but it does tell you that the caucuses sort of did work in a way because they did also match up to some of the polling.
Yeah, the question is, with a lot of strong showings from multiple contenders, how does the field get winnowed, right? How do we see change as they look at the next states? It's ultimately about the delegate counts, and Iowa has 40-some delegate counts. It's not a lot compared to like Super Tuesday, where it's over 1,000, but it's the momentum, and a lot of frustration among campaigns last night was like, how do we project momentum and like we're winning if no one really knows what happened? So a lot of evaluation and analysis going on there. You can find more, of course, from our reporters at WashingtonPost.com. It's this. We were all heading back to D.C. this morning, and it was like there is still news to report here in Iowa to see how this process goes. But this is an incredible moment because we've got the Iowa caucuses, the first Americans to weigh in on the 2020 presidential race. We've got State of the Union. We've got impeachment tomorrow. It's so much coming together at once in this national moment. President Trump was and his campaign was declaring a victory of sorts last night as sort of chaos reigned in the Iowa results. We saw the Trump campaign really making fun of it and knocking it, and some are wondering if this is a moment that he can sort of poke his finger into and sow more chaos and concern among Democrats.
Right, and I think it's really going to be interesting to see what we see in New Hampshire next week, because if this is the beginning, and you see that President Trump sort of had the ammunition there with this, fallout from the caucuses, that is he going to be able to say that whoever came out in Iowa or New Hampshire really aren't the legitimate front runners? Is it a divisive moment for the Democrats? Yeah.
Exactly what the Democrats did not want to happen.
Right.
Well, Rhonda, our colleague Philip Rucker, our Washington White House Bureau Chief, is on the phone with us now, joining us from New York. Phil, great to talk with you. Give us a sense of what you'll be listening for in the president's speech tonight.
Yeah, Libby, good to be with you. A couple things that I would look for. First of all, does he make any reference at all to impeachment? We know from our reporting at the Washington Post that Republican senators have been privately urging the president not to mention impeachment, just not to even bring it up, in part because that Senate vote, the expected acquittal, is not going to happen till Wednesday, and so they don't want the president to get ahead of things. But knowing President Trump as we do, it might be hard for him to declare victory in some way, whether there's a subtle reference or something more direct than that. We know he's been waiting for this moment for a while to be able to move past the months-long impeachment inquiry and focus on the campaign. So looking for that. Also looking to see whether, his appeals to bipartisanship, which we know are going to be written into the script of tonight's speech, whether that sounds authentic and real. The preview from White House officials for this speech has been he wants to talk about an American comeback story and talk about ways to work across the aisle with Democrats on the economy and other issues. But we know from just following the president's Twitter comments the last few days, he has a lot of venom right now for Democrats. He wants to seek revenge and retaliate against Democrats who he feel wronged him by impeaching him in the House and by branding him with that historic distinction. So let's look for the tone and how genuinely Trump is really trying to cross the aisle. I suspect it will not sound very genuine.
Hey, Phil, what type of tone, if you could discuss that a little bit more, what type of tone do you think he's going to have to strike in order to resonate with his voters and supporters?
It's interesting. The way Trump connects best with his supporters and his base voters tends to be at his campaign rallies, which is a very different tone, those remarks at rallies, than what we can expect at the State of the Union tonight. Typically, when Trump gives these big set speeches, like at the State of the Union or other very formal addresses that he delivers from the White House, he sticks to the script. He follows the teleprompter. He, says all the things that you would expect the normal president to say about American greatness and our common values and so forth. And then he'll get home and take to Twitter and tell you what he really thinks. And there's a dichotomy there. I think the most important thing for his supporters to be looking for tonight is just the fact that he's walking into that House chamber, the same room where 48 days ago Democrats voted to impeach him, the third president in history to be impeached, that he's walking into that chamber to serve out the rest of his term and to fight on for a second term. They're going to see him as resilient and having beaten back this impeachment inquiry, and that alone is going to give strength, I think, to his supporters. And of course, we can expect Trump to go through a checklist of conservative priorities that's also key to the conservative base agenda.
Phil, with the backdrop of the Iowa caucus happening last night, the contest for the Democratic nominee starting officially, President Trump's campaign is really needling and poking Democrats over the lack of reporting of the results. What is the president's inner circle making of Iowa, and how are they planning to use this?
They see the debacle in Iowa with the caucus results, frankly, as an opportunity, a political opportunity, because the Iowa caucuses last night were run by the Democratic Party, and what we're hearing from the president as well as his advisors and allies is, look, the Democrats can't even count people in these caucus sites. They're not even able to figure out who their winner is from this caucus. Furthermore, we've seen the president and others around him try to stoke conspiracy theories that have not been founded, but to try to make people out in the public lose faith in the results from the Iowa caucuses, feel like maybe this caucus process was rigged or unfair or not counting the proper number of people in these counties and precincts. And I think we can expect Trump over the next several days to really try to exploit all of that, not only to cast doubt on the nominating process itself, but also cast doubt on the effectiveness of the Democratic Party to manage a process like this. The thinking being, if they can't run an Iowa caucus, how can they manage your health care? We've seen the president start to make that point.
All right, Philip Rucker, White House Bureau Chief, thank you so much for joining us. We're now with Sungmin Kim, one of our colleagues who's been covering all of this drama unfolding on Capitol Hill. Sungmin, what are you going to be listening for tonight in the president's speech?
I'm really going to be listening for his tone. His aides have made it very clear that he won't be talking about impeachment, which is kind of a surprise to a lot of Democratic and Republicans here, because they thought Democrats particularly, thought he would be gloating over the impending acquittal. Republicans had advised him, not so subtly, that maybe he should avoid talking about this impeachment matter. But so I'm basically going to be looking for the tone, his outlook for the year, how he frames the rest of the 9 months that we have until the elections. And we've gotten just some excerpts from the White House now of the State of the Union. He's going to talk about what he calls the Great American Comeback. I thought this line that he's going to talk about a lot of the accomplishments of his administration, the economic factor, which we know the strong economy is what is really propelling the president's approval ratings right now. We saw a new Gallup poll today saying he is at 49%. That is the highest of his presidency, which is pretty remarkable that figure is coming at a very contentious time in the middle of his impeachment process. So he's going to talk about the economy. He's going to talk about how we will never let socialism destroy American health care, clearly a reference to the Medicare for All programs espoused by a lot of the Democratic presidential candidates. So a lot to look for in tonight's address.
There's always so much interest in how the chamber reacts, right? And it's predictable in terms of like when Republicans are going to cheer,
Definitely.
give an ovation, when Democrats are going to sit quietly. What will you be watching for, though, in terms of that body language and how the House and the Senate and his cabinet greet him?
I'd be interested in just to see what Democrats react to. I mean, there may be bipartisan overtures in the speech. For example, the president has talked a lot about paid family leave, which has traditionally been a Democratic priority. We're expecting mentions of that tonight. And so I expect Democrats, that would be, depending on how he frames it, that would be a line that Democrats would like. But I'm also looking for really sharp lines that, and the kind of reaction that Democrats can get. Last year, I think one of the more memorable lines from the president's speech last year was when you can't legislate while you're investigating. Well, that's obviously not true. That was a line that really got Democrats kind of worked up. So I'm looking for lines like that, how Democrats react, and seeing what they're, just basically seeing, what opportunities there may be for any sort of bipartisan overtures during the speech.
Yeah, and USMCA is also another one, the trade deal. That was a bipartisan effort. Of course, he did not invite the Democrats in the House who worked on that deal, but I assume he might also touch on trade as well.
He would definitely touch on trade. That has been one of the more more recent accomplishments of the administration. He got the phase 1 of the China deal. There was a smaller deal with Japan that was started to be formalized at the UN General Assembly. Obviously, the USMCA is probably the biggest accomplishment. And trade is so important for a lot of these swing states where he's going to have to be competitive and he's going to have to win in his reelection bid.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so we see a lot of the women of the House on the Democratic side of the aisle wearing white tonight. They did it last year as well to celebrate like the suffrage movement. It does create a striking visual tableau if so many women are wearing white as as the audience is panned. What is the significance of that? Like, what are the Democrats trying to say?
I mean, last year, recall, it really was the year for the year of the women for House Democrats. It was the female candidates and female voters, female activists that really propelled.
Female speaker
of the House, again for the second time, that really helped propel House Democrats to the majority. So they're making a similar symbol, a similar message tonight.
And so we'll see how Speaker Pelosi comports herself in that position. I mean, she sits right behind the president. We'll have that striking image as we did
the body
last year.
language. Yeah,
definitely. The body language would be a lot to watch. I mean, it was always really interesting to see, previous speakers react to, for example, Speaker Boehner react to what President Obama was saying. But Speaker Pelosi and President Trump have a much different relationship and much different interactions than their predecessors. So it'll be really interesting to watch and see how Pelosi keeps her poker face.
What will you be watching for from Speaker Pelosi, Rhonda?
Again, the body language. I mean, this woman just for the last few months led an investigation into the impeachment, and now we'll have the president steps away from her. So we haven't quite seen them in the same room, other than, what was it, a couple months ago when there was that famous picture of her getting up from the table during their negotiations. So
and her people say that was the last time they had interacted.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking too. So
this will be really interesting to watch tonight.
They're not only in the same room, they're on the same platform, steps away from each other. So looking at her face during certain moments, especially although you said he does not plan to bring up the impeachment, but even if he just kind of hints at it or something, you definitely look at her face. It's going to be interesting.
Definitely.
There's the scripted president, and then there's President Trump just, speaking for President Trump. So we'll see how closely he hews to his script tonight and if he delivers what he promises, which is more of like a sober and forward-looking speech.
Exactly. I mean, we always call it, is it Twitter Trump or teleprompter Trump? And the signs are that we may get teleprompter Trump tonight, but once the acquittal happens that we expect tomorrow afternoon, I think there will be an opportunity for a potential speech where the president does take a victory lap and does say he was exonerated. So that'll be kind of the big speech that really that kind of closes a chapter, at least for now, on the impeachment saga.
Seung-Min Kim, thank you so much. Appreciate your time. We can see right now the White House watching for President Trump, this departure shot as he makes the trip from the White House to down Pennsylvania Avenue and to the U.S. Capitol building. It's a short distance, Rhonda, but it has been a gulf over these past weeks as we've seen the House Democrats in December pushing forward this impeachment. Right up the road, President Trump undergoing this scrutiny, undergoing the investigation process. Now he is making this trip down Pennsylvania Avenue to greet them in their own chamber. Right. I mean, it's pretty remarkable.
And his presence has really been felt throughout this impeachment process because he had surrogates here. Mark Meadows was one, and Representative John Ratcliffe, he was also one. So even though he wasn't physically here, he also was felt here too throughout this whole process. And you know what? Now we have another lawmaker with us, Representative Katie Porter.
Come on over. Welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. You were a Democrat from California, to let people at home know that. But you were also born and raised in Iowa, right?
Correct. I'm a fifth-generation Iowan and was just back participating in the caucuses and really had fun.
So we have to know, what do you think about last night?
I thought the turnout was strong, and I was really impressed with the level of civility at the caucuses. I was at 2 different caucus events and saw people really engaging with each other in a friendly, civil manner. And I think with the whole discussion about the results and who won, one of the things that's being lost is the sense of unity that I saw on the ground in Iowa. And I think that's the single most important thing that we take forward, particularly tonight with State of the Union, is how are we going to unify our party going forward.
Congresswoman, who were you supporting last night?
I'm one of the national co-chairs of Elizabeth Warren's campaign, along with my freshman colleagues, Ayanna Pressley and Deb Haaland. So we are new voices in Congress, and we are part of a historic class, and we're the first time that a presidential candidate has had all women co-chairs.
And we should,
go ahead.
We should also say that you were a surrogate during the time that she came to the Hill to be involved in the impeachment proceedings, you were a surrogate traveling for Elizabeth Warren.
Absolutely, and I would have been out there regardless, but I think it's important that she did her job, and I would say the same thing about the other senatorial candidates. I'm glad they were here fulfilling their duty, and look, beating Donald Trump is going to require all of us going into our communities, having conversations, engaging with voters, so I was glad to have the opportunity to do that, and I'm looking forward to continuing to do that with my constituents back in Orange County.
Are you disappointed with her results? We're only getting 62% of reporting. Do you feel like she's leaving Iowa with strength?
She's leaving in the top three. It was a very strong showing. The two precincts that I was at were in Iowa City. She won them both almost 2-1. So we're going to see different results in different parts of Iowa because despite what you hear, there is some diversity to Iowa in terms of age, in terms of religion, in terms of kind of background. And so I think it's a strong showing. And I saw her last night, talked to her personally. She was upbeat. She was happy. She was energetic. She's the Elizabeth Warren that I know and love and want to see in the presidency.
You're wearing white tonight. Tell us about why and what you hope to communicate with that.
I'm wearing white tonight in support of the push for equal rights for women. This is the traditional color of suffragettes who fought for the vote for women, and so I'm joining my Democratic women colleagues in wearing white in recognition that fight for equality is ongoing.
Thank you so much, Congresswoman.
Thank
I appreciate
you.
your time.
Thank you.
So, Rhonda, we've all been watching to see if the Senate candidates who are running for presidential candidates would be coming tonight to the State of the Union, or if they would instead be plowing on to New Hampshire. We just saw Michael Bennet a little while ago. He is with the fourth senator running for president. Of course, it's Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren, Amy Klobuchar. But Michael Bennet is here tonight. He's pretty much set up camp in New Hampshire, though, for the past many, many weeks. He sort of leapfrogged over Iowa and put a lot of his, all of his eggs really into New Hampshire.
Yeah, in December he announced that he was only going to come through Iowa once, but do 50 town halls in New Hampshire. So he put all the steam into New Hampshire, and I don't think from the comments that he just told us about, I don't think he really regrets that. So
yeah, so we just talked to Michael Bennet, and he definitely did not regret missing Iowa. He said, while he could never have predicted what happened there, it was not lost on him that he missed a bit of a cluster. So the senator is here tonight for basically just tonight, tomorrow for the impeachment vote. Of course, we'll see that acquittal vote at 4 p.m. tomorrow, and then he plans to head back to New Hampshire after that. Let's welcome Karin DeMerchant to our group here. Thank you so much, one of our colleagues who covers Capitol Hill, as we watch here the process of tonight. Karin, we've been hearing all of our colleagues talking about how they're really focused on the president's tone, and they'll be listening not just for the substance of his remarks, but the tone he takes. Why is that so important?
Well, I think that everybody's looking at all the things going on right now. Is the president going to take a victory lap or try to take a preliminary one because he knows the impeachment vote's coming tomorrow and it's likely going to be an acquittal? Is he going to say something about what's going on in Iowa right now? Is he going to sound like he is more of the President Trump that works off of the prepared comments, or is he going to sound like rally Trump, who can often sound like he's gloating about things that aren't going well for other people and bragging about his own? Last time he's done, in the previous iterations of the State of the Union, he's stuck mostly to the teleprompter, but those haven't been in election years when there's so many high-stakes things going on all at once having to do with his presidency. So we'll see where he goes off script, really. That's going to be the moments that are going to be the most telling of how much he is, what his mindset is, and also how much he is trying to control that in the moment.
do you think Senate Republicans are nervous that he might go off script a little bit?
I think Senate Republicans are probably feeling pretty good at this point in time, and they are basically saying that they would advise him not to talk about impeachment and to stick to the things that are bipartisan. But I think nervous would be a little bit much because they're kind of expecting the unexpected, which is what they normally do with President Trump. And so they're kind of saying, look, I would not advise him to take any sort of, trains of thought or argument that lead him toward the line of impeachment or anything that might be perceived as partisan here. But I know who I'm dealing with, and I know who I'm watching, and I know that it's very difficult to control this person. And so that's kind of where they are.
Yeah, anything specific that you're looking at for tonight? Any one accomplishment maybe that he can kind of, highlight?
Well, I mean, I think we're going to have to look and see what the president says about economic issues, what the president says about his plans for things that, both parties have defined as kitchen table issues for the election, whether that's prescription drugs or other sorts of things dealing with, checkbook issues, or, the president could talk in a way that kind of speaks to people where they live, or he could talk about the stock market in that regard, and also what he says about foreign policy, because Iran has been, kind of in the back burner while we've been focused on impeachment, but wasn't that long ago, and is still the subject of controversy.
Very important. I want to just mention that the senators are processing behind us over to the House chamber. So if you see a lot of activity, we just saw Leader McConnell go by. All the senators are leaving now from the Senate over to here. Michael Bennet is talking to John Tester. This is actually a moment sometimes of some bipartisan conversation. Like you do see some cross aisle walking here as we see them go through.
Yeah, I mean, it used to actually be an exercise of people trying to sit with somebody of the opposite party. That doesn't happen that much anymore. I mean, some do, but
so
it's
behind us, you can see Senator Susan Collins, Senator Lindsey Graham, so of the same party. But I have seen a couple of buddy moments. It is a bit of a backup to get into the House chamber. We were talking earlier about how the House chamber looks sort of so grand and big when you see it on television, but it is kind of a tight space, and when you're getting all members of like the House, the Senate, the Cabinet, the Supreme Court, all of these guests up in the seating area, it's a tight space. It's
a tight squeeze. That House is normally
Vice
designed
President
to
has arrived.
Yeah, shows you we're getting close. It's a chamber designed to hold the 435 members of Congress, and you're squeezing in another 150 people or thereabouts.
There's the president leaving with the first lady leaving the White House to head down to the Capitol building. Karen, please, I didn't want to interrupt you.
No, that's totally fine. I mean, we are clearly, this is the march of all of the dignitaries basically walking in, and it's a short mile and a half. Is that even that much from the White House to this end of Pennsylvania Avenue? So yeah, I mean, this is all gearing up to a fairly punctual start, I guess, and we will see what the reception for the president is. I mean, is everybody going to applaud? Is everybody going to stand? There are many gestures that the members of Congress can make during this, and from the press gallery, we have a perfect view of who's doing what. It's sometimes, as your previous guest was, people dress in certain ways to make a statement. People will, oftentimes the applause is split down the aisle, and it won't be a clear half of the chamber this time because some of the Republicans and Democrats are intermingling in terms of their seating arrangements. But the reaction is going to be very interesting because, as polarizing as this president is, there are some issues where he has worked with Democrats on, and our people are going to take the moment as a timeout to kind of celebrate/cheer on what may be on the agenda for the rest of the year, which frankly is going to be difficult given that it's an election year and it's going to remain a very polarized environment in D.C. and across the country.
The president giving the thumbs up as he heads off in the motorcade to come to the U.S. Capitol building. You're seeing the procession of senators behind us. The vice president is already in the chamber. Karin, some members of Congress are skipping tonight's speech. Some House Democrats are choosing not to attend.
Right. I mean, and that is a gesture of some form of protest as well, with their displeasure with the way that the president has been conducting policy, that the impeachment inquiry, everything else like that. I think you're seeing most Democrats show up, though. And this is the thing. I mean, it's been a tradition since it was revived in 1913 that the president actually comes to the Capitol to deliver the address in person, and people show up, and you kind of, let the fighting take a pause for the hour and change duration of the speech, except for, as I said, the reactions that they are able to have in sitting in the chamber. And it's going to be, whatever is said, whatever the reactions are, whoever stays home, everybody's still in office tomorrow and has to pick up where we left off and move forward. And we will see the more collegial moments, and we will see the bickering that happens every place from these halls down the airwaves. So
it's important to point out
nothing
that
changes
there are
that
not a lot
much.
of House Democrats who are choosing to protest and not attend, but there are a handful.
Yes.
Others want to be here in person, to be a visual reminder to President Trump, especially those who are wearing white, who will be unavoidable for his eye to catch in the crowd, to show him that they are here, they are standing against him, they are part of the resistance, so to speak, and they will show that with stony faces by sitting in their chair when he makes comments that they don't approve of. We see Speaker
you saw somebody like Ilhan Omar earlier today tweet out that her presence here is the resistance, and so everybody's kind of doing this as they would interpret it themselves, and the cameras are on the president, though, for the most part, not necessarily on the audience as much as we're going to be watching them as closely as we watch the president.
We just saw a shot of Lamar Alexander, someone that we've all, of course, been focused and watching on. I know you two have been probably following him, stalking him all over the Capitol, trying to get him on the record, this impeachment process.
It's going to be quite interesting right at the beginning, because when the president walks in, there's usually a pylon of people stretching their arms across the aisle, trying to shake his hand. There's been some Republicans, Lamar Alexander, Susan Collins, who have had some harsh words for the president in the last few days.
Even Lisa Murkowski now.
Even Lisa Murkowski, even though they haven't broken with him on the ultimate impeachment vote, and on some interim ones as well, depending on who it is. they've said some things that are pretty harsh, that they think he did the wrong thing. Do they also join that group of people that are reaching out to shake the president's hand, or do they kind of stay back?
Or does he reject their hand too?
Or does he reject their hand? There is so much body language to watch here, especially in the opening moments where there really isn't that. Once everybody sits down and the president's up on the podium, okay, that's very, very different. But in those 90 seconds between him opening the door, the sergeant at arms announcing the president of the United States, and him making his very, very slow walk all the way up to the front of the well, there's a lot of interesting dynamics at play. And oftentimes, the funny thing is that sometimes the president's biggest critics are also the ones who are right there trying to shake the hand of the leader of the free world. And it's just, there's multiple little storylines, and it's a great little character study of kind of both how DC politics work, but also how just, politician pomp and circumstance and ego and everything else works too.
Right.
And that's all. There's a bunch of crisscrossing narratives that you can observe as that introductory entrance happens.
I'm interested in hearing from both of you what you think about this moment for President Trump. He really wanted to have this impeachment process over. Acquittal is all but certain tomorrow, but it does loom over the speech tonight, and it will go down in history as the day after the State of the Union. Not even 24 hours later. The impeachment trial wrapped up. And even though it resulted in his acquittal, which is all but certain based on the vote count, it goes down in history this way. So I'd love to hear from both of you how the president perceives this moment. Can he do a victory lap tonight? Is it premature? And how will he project that versus what might be going on behind the scenes?
Well, I don't think he can do a full victory lap tonight, but also everybody who was a swing vote, unless there is a shocker tomorrow. We kind of know how everybody's going to vote at this point.
Especially since they're announcing it on the Senate floor, so
they're announcing it on the Senate floor.
Or revealing
I really think that the big question right now is not the Republicans; it's whether he might get a Democrat to vote to acquit him on certain charges too. And so, can the president claim? I think the president is hoping that tomorrow he can claim a bipartisan acquittal, and he cannot do that right now. So he's going to be having to give a restrained victory lap, but he does have the confidence of knowing this is going to be behind him in less than 24 hours, and that probably will give him maybe an air of calm, if not absolute unbridled joy at this point. But I think it's yes, he's still the president going through the impeachment inquiry, but as has been the case for much of this impeachment trial, we've kind of known where it was going to end. We just didn't know what the interim was going to look like, if there would be witnesses or not. But very, very few people, I think, in the whole country would have said there would have been 20 Republicans to vote to convict him, no matter what had happened, right? And so this is like the very, very, very penultimate stage of that whole process where we know where it's going to end. The president knows where it's going to end. So does he lash out about it the way he does on Twitter, or does he just say, we know where this is going, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, party tomorrow?
Rhonda, what are your thoughts in this moment?
Well, I think we all can agree that he is a president that kind of thrives with attention. So really this is sort of like the pregame for tomorrow, honestly. All eyes are going to be on him tonight. Americans who may not typically watch this definitely want to hear what he has to say on the eve of his impeachment vote in the Senate. So I do think that this sort of also is a part of a larger brand where people, the Trump administration wants all eyes on them during these critical moments. And because we know what the vote will be, we think we know what the vote will be tomorrow, there really isn't much loss here for him tonight.
I have to say, it's important that he not turn off those moderate Democrats and also people like Lisa Murkowski and Lamar Alexander, who are fundamentally institutionalists, people who believe in the institution. Part of their pushback on this was like the process and complaining about the Democrats, but they have criticized President Trump, and this will be very uncomfortable for them if he deviates from the script, both literally and symbolically tonight, and does something that is more emotional and is more of a lash out. It just puts them in a tougher spot if you're a moderate Republican, perhaps an easier spot if you're a moderate Democrat and you're about to make a tough vote to acquit.
Well, he can't do anything crazy, right? And he cannot go full rally style President Trump. He has to remain reflective of the august setting in which he is in, shall we say, which he has successfully done in years past in this environment for this speech. So even if he goes a little bit looser than he has in the past years, it's probably still within the realm of normal. Remember, this is a president who's feeling buoyed right now. His approval ratings are the highest that they've ever been. He feels like all the numbers are going his direction. He's confident, and when he's confident, sometimes he can be more in control of things. Remember, it's usually when he's feeling more we have seen various things, but it's often when he's feeling like he's on the back foot and under attack that he tends to tweet out the most angry things. So maybe that suggests that he will be in a place where he feels like he's sitting pretty and doesn't have to throw out any tongue lashings. But again, he does seem to have a sense, and certainly his advisors have a sense, of this setting as being very different than a rally. So it would be not in keeping with what he's done for him to go full rally style.
Absolutely. And you do get the sense that this is a president who plays to the cameras, who recognizes the typecasting, the role casting, and especially the moment that this calls for. You're watching live coverage in the Washington Post. I'm doing a time check here. In about 15 minutes is when the president is scheduled to speak. You see there the two Alaskan senators, Dan Sullivan in the foreground and Lisa Murkowski there in the background. You know, fascinating to see some of these delegations where there was no doubt where Senator Sullivan would come down on impeachment. Lisa Murkowski was a real wild card, and so there are some states where activists and people who were concerned on both sides of the aisle have been courting and pressuring and begging their senators to vote one way or the other. And a lot of these people were a foregone conclusion, so they haven't had to undergo that very public scrutiny. So as we finally hit the last phases of this impeachment story, it may be a relief for some of them. The question is, will their constituents allow them to move on, or will this keep being something that is brought up on both sides of the aisle?
Yeah, I think that's been a major question for a long time, frankly. I mean, we have been talking for a long time about, do voters care about impeachment as much as they care about everything that the Congress is not doing while they're doing impeachment? And both sides have used that as a dagger and as a talking point. And so we'll see what the staying power is of the impeachment messaging after it's done.
So you can see there the House Speaker, the Vice President, preparing the chamber for President Trump to enter in just a little while. We'll bring you live coverage of the president's speech. The Washington Post will stay with this all night, and then afterwards we will see a Democratic response from the governor of Michigan. So let's just go through the TikTok here. We will see the House Sergeant at Arms announce the president's arrival shortly after 9 o'clock is when that is supposed to happen, and then we will see the president move through the aisle, and as Karen said, he will be greeted by photos and moments and handshakes and everything else as he makes his way down. We will of course see the First Lady up in the balcony area with the First Lady and President's guests. And the President is saying this isn't going to be a super long speech tonight. We do get a sense from the White House of what to expect, Karen.
Right. I mean, I think that both sides have given a sense of what they're planning in these speeches. The President doesn't want to lose his audience, and so to not give a very rambling speech would be in his best interest.
Senator from South Dakota, Mr. Thune. Senator from Iowa, Mr. Grassley. Senator from Wyoming, Mr. Barrasso.
The Vice President announcing the escort for President Trump, and so we'll just keep sharing this moment with you as we watch the proceedings in the Senate. It's already striking to see as you get some of the pans, the House members wearing white, which is both a sign of the suffrage movement. It's a sign of sort of solidarity for women, and also it's a protest against President Trump.
And they did it last year as well.
That's true. It's interesting also to see how many of the Republican women are wearing red.
Members of the escort committees will
Very true. Very true.
What will you be watching for from Speaker Pelosi, Rhonda?
And I think I said it, a few moments ago, it's that body language. This is the first time she and President Trump have been in the same space since that meeting where they were negotiating and she got up and stood up, and that famous photo we have of her pointing at him and standing up and then leaving the room. It's just, I'm interested in those optics right now. I think she's obviously a very skilled politician. She has been saying in almost every one of her press briefings that I have been in the last month or so that she can walk and chew gum at the same time. They can legislate, investigate, and litigate all at the same time. And, being in a situation like this is a testimony to that. So, yeah, that's what I'm looking for.
And remember, the camera is on her as much as it's on President Trump the whole time.
Right.
And we know Nancy Pelosi has a very expressive face. Even the twitches of her eyebrow managed to become internet memes. And so, this is going to be something like her reactions are going to be probably as much of a thing to take note of as the president's words.
Last year, that sort of, what do you even call a front clap of hers, almost like a baby shark
Oh,
clap.
that's right, the baby shark clap.
got a lot of attention. Her body language is so closely watched, Karen.
It is very closely watched. It's always closely watched. And she's somebody who, as I was just saying a second ago, is extremely expressive about how she presents herself. And so I think that she's watching the president, the cameras are watching her, her party members are watching her. Mick Mulvaney, everybody is in
we
that
just saw
chamber.
Mick Mulvaney, someone that has been talked about a lot in the last week as a potential witness in the Senate trial. He's there.
Yeah, it's the amount of bickering that has been going on, and that's not maybe the right term, it's real dispute and arguing over what all these people's roles were in this impeachment inquiry. And it's like we've just hit a pause button for the next 90 minutes or so, and everybody's in the same room, and it'll resume tomorrow, the dispute over who should have shown up as a witness and who is doing a cover-up and who is, pursuing an impeachment investigation that one party thinks that they shouldn't, et cetera. I mean, it's slightly surreal if you think about the juxtaposition of this event against everything else that's been going on for months.
Last night, of course, the Iowa caucus, the first chance for Democrats to weigh in on who they think should be their party's nominee. But there was also a Republican caucus last night. Of course, got a lot less attention because President Trump was the presumptive winner. There were a couple of other candidates. 97%, yeah. So President Trump, though, officially kicking off this 2020 cycle. And a lot of supporters of the president, members of his inner circle, had gone to Iowa to be there for that moment, showing force, supporting the president out on the road. As a symbolic way. They were needed to sort of whip the votes and get people to support him, but they were needed for some enthusiasm and to show that.
Right. I think the president's challenge right now is to make sure that he does not seem like he's taking anybody for granted that was on his side, because it's going to come down to how he performs against whoever the Democratic nominee is in a group of swing states that are going to be extremely pivotal. And the president's eyeing his electoral college math, and the Democrats are eyeing it too and figuring out how they can combat it. And the president has the advantage of not having existential competition here, so that he can focus on...
I've got to interrupt you, though. Jerry Nadler, you can see what he was reading there. It's a pocket constitution.
Well, that's very
Paul
fitting.
Kane shared that tidbit with us, so no need to really remind everyone that Jerry Nadler, chairman of the Judiciary Committee, was so instrumental in this process of impeachment. Reading, I have to say it again, a pocket constitution as this is about to unfold. We also saw there an image, of course, of Ivanka Trump and her husband, Jared Kushner, members of the president's team, as well as of his family. I'm sorry to interrupt you, Karen.
Oh, no, that's totally fine. And there's Adam Schiff. I mean, these are the two these are the two chairmen who are leading the House managers who have been prosecuting the impeachment trial for the last 2 weeks. And here they are, and they are going to listen attentively to the president, as they were to the president's lawyers, and vice versa during the course of the trial. And then we pick up for a final vote again tomorrow. There's Kirsten Sinema, who's, one of the people that we're watching on the Democratic side of the aisle to see if she will vote to convict on both of the articles, or if she will vote to acquit on one or more of the articles.
How significant would it be, Rhonda, if a Democrat does vote to acquit, even whether it's on one of the articles or both?
That's a great question. I think if it's Kristen Sinema, that's going to be very interesting, because Arizona politics right now are kind of all over the place in terms of being kind of a growing purple state. So you have a very tight House race there as well this year. I think if she does vote, whichever way she votes is going to be worth really dissecting, because, how is that going to speak to Arizona constituents? The others, I'm not quite sure that this vote will follow them as much. I don't know if it's going to follow them all the way to Election Day. But I think in the near term, you're definitely going to see a little bit of backlash for any Democrat who votes for acquittal.
So many people who are not just influential in Congress, but influential in the national future of both the Republican and Democratic parties are in this room. We just saw Kamala Harris sitting not that far away from Kirsten Gillibrand, two former presidential candidates in 2020. We saw Cory Booker, of course.
Chief Justice and Associate Justices of the Supreme Court.
Supreme Court enters the chamber. Here in Statuary Hall, it's gotten quiet as we've watched these people proceed through here on their way. You can see they're the Chief Justice.
Fresh from the impeachment trial?
It's interesting to see. It's interesting to see which of the justices came, because it's never all of them. All nine. I mean, maybe it has been. In my lifetime watching these, I've never recalled a time when it's been all nine of the justices. And you had Roberts, Kagan, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh, two of the Trump appointed, the guy who's presiding over the impeachment trial, and then one representative from the more liberal side of the bench. That's an interesting combination.
Very interesting.
Members of the president's cabinet are here as well. So the president does look out to a sea of friendly faces in one regard. I mean, he sees his cabinet, he sees his team, he knows that his family are there in the balcony. There's always, of course, a member of the president's cabinet that holds back just in case of national emergency. But otherwise, they're there, and they're there to support the president. They're there to show him that they are part of his team and part of the group that will enact the agenda that the president lays out tonight. The theme of the speech tonight is the great American comeback, and the White House says that it's a signal that the president's eager to move forward in this moment.
That's three of the managers sitting together there, Val Demings, Jason Crow, and Sylvia Garcia. So again, they have been part of the team that's been prosecuting the impeachment case. And they're all sitting, they all actually, interesting, they're all sitting in groups near each other because Schiff, Nadler, and Lofgren are all in a block there too. And I couldn't see the full row. I don't know if it's everybody in one row, but the fact that they're sitting at least in blocks like that, if not as one block, is also a gesture of what they're facing. I mean,
solidarity.
The president can see them. They are sitting on the side of the chamber that they would in the Senate to be making that case, and that is parallel.
Look, you can see the reporters there. This is sort of a unique moment because they don't have a lot of control over where the cameras pan, and so you can see their journalists taking notes, getting ready. You see them wearing headsets because they're not on camera there in the balcony. They're just doing audio, and they're not allowed to have the cameras trained on them to do like a live shot from inside of there. That's why you see them sort of going old school radio style. They get a chance to watch, and you can see their former presidential candidates. What a moment, and you've got to wonder what's in their minds as they watch what unfolded in Iowa last night. We did talk to Michael Bennet earlier, who had no regrets. It's basically skipping Iowa in his bid for the president.
Yeah. I think that generally speaking, Democrats are kind of a little bit mind-blown and shell-shocked that happened today. I think that they were expecting that this would be a boom, boom, boom week, Iowa Monday, State of the Union Tuesday, impeachment vote Wednesday, and the fact that everything is now just a smushy blur that isn't well defined is kind of making them reel a little bit, because you've got to rethink the message completely when you don't have the ability to move from one to the next.
There's Congressman Joaquin Castro, the twin brother, of course, of Julian Castro, who was a presidential candidate, who was very critical of Iowa and said it was not representative as the first state in the nation to weigh in to choose the president. And he came out last night condemning that process. Basically saying the caucuses have got to go. So you'll see some shakeout here as Democrats do some soul searching to figure out what they do in the future and how they both clean up the situation as well as find some unity. And that is on the minds of Democrats as they're in this chamber tonight. I just want to remind you we're a few minutes away from 9 o'clock Eastern time, and that is when the president is scheduled to come into the House chamber. We will bring you his speech live and uninterrupted. Afterwards, Governor Gretchen Whitmer, the governor of Michigan, a Democrat, will give the Democratic response, and we'll also bring that to you live. We'll have some analysis afterwards, as well as look ahead to tomorrow's final impeachment vote, Rhonda, that's scheduled for 4 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. Karen DeMergent, thanks so much for talking with us as you continue to report tonight. Rhonda, the State of the Union is historic. It's symbolic. It is one of these moments of pomp and circumstance of Washington.
And I think it speaks to the institution of the Congress and also the presidency. You have some of the harshest critics of President Trump who are seated here and going to listen to him for foreseeably an hour or a little bit more than an hour. Last year, his speech took an hour and 22 minutes. We see the First Lady walk in, and so the president must not be far behind. She's receiving applause from the chamber. And she's right next to Tiffany Trump, their daughter.
Members of President Trump's family, like Lara Trump, his daughter-in-law, have been out supporting him, essentially campaigning for him. They've been out at rallies. They've been out talking about him. The First Lady will be surrounded by people who the First Lady and President have invited, and they're symbolic and speak to issues that they care about and that the President will touch on in the speech.
Right, immigration, job growth, the tax
And that looks
cut.
like Rush Limbaugh next to the First Lady. We'll get confirmation on that, Rhonda, but that does look like Rush Limbaugh, who the president has said he would like to give the Medal of Freedom to. Rush Limbaugh just announcing that he has cancer.
Madam Speaker, the President's Cabinet.
We don't know yet which member of the president's cabinet stayed behind, but we'll probably know as we do the head count here and figure out who is missing. That's right. Some of these cabinet members have been embroiled in questions over President Trump's dealings in Ukraine. Mike Pompeo is one of them. And of course, there is Bill Barr, the Attorney General, someone who's also come under question and criticism in the light of the information that John Bolton's draft manuscript contains. It does raise questions about Bill Barr and his conversation, sort of the what he knew and when he knew it. You can see there's Secretary Elaine Chao, who's Mitch McConnell's wife. Mitch McConnell is one of those senators who's up for re-election, Rhonda, but he has pledged to be in concert with the White House during this whole impeachment process, and he has been able to do that. I mean, that he has had a very successful ability to keep his caucus in line. The fact that they did not allow for witnesses in the impeachment trial
and
just
we know
shows
after,
the power he has.
Right. After that vote on last Friday, he did speak with the president about the timeline for this week. So, yeah, he kept to the promise of working with the White House on how the impeachment trial would play out.
We just saw Betsy DeVos, the education secretary, also the head of the CIA there, Gina Haspel. It's a unique moment in Washington. It's always interesting to see just how many people actually tune in to the State of the Union, how interested the American public is. Is it more of an insular Washington event, or is it something that the nation is tuning into? So much symbolism as we see there. Their former presidential candidate Cory Booker. It's 9:01, and we do expect soon the announcement by the Sergeant-at-Arms that the president is entering the chamber. We know that the president plans to touch on trade, infrastructure. He'll also tackle some international issues. He wants to both talk about what he believes are accomplishments of his administration over the past year, but also look ahead to what he does next. And this isn't just marking a moment in his presidency, Rhonda. It's also, in a sense, a kickoff to 2020. And even though this is the president speaking as the man who leads the nation, he is also someone who hopes to keep that job.
That's right.
And so what he says tonight will be a bid to convince the American people that he should be reelected in November 2020.
If you see some of the ads that he's been running in the recent weeks, he is hitting, messaging about how much he believes he's helped minorities, African Americans and Hispanics with job growth. And I'm noticing the members of the Congressional Black Caucus some of them are all wearing cloths, African cloths around their necks. So it's going to be interesting if he's trying to bring that and highlight that out. It'll be interesting to see, if they agree, if they clap. Many people do not agree that under his presidency, and we think we're seeing him right now.
The President of the United States about to enter the chamber. Sergeant-at-Arms there about to bring him in and introduce him. The cameras behind us are going wild because they have a shot of the president as he is about to enter the chamber.
Madam Speaker, the President of the United States.
President Trump shaking hands as he enters the House chamber and makes that walk that is such a short walk, Rhonda, but it can take presidents such a long time.
With all the handshakes,
absolutely, with all those moments where they want their constituents back home to see that they got a handshake from the president. They know the cameras are on this moment. They know that it's being broadcast live. They know that there will be stills of this. And so they want to be able to show their supporters back home that they had that moment with the president. No surprise that it's Republicans right on the aisle there, trying to get that handshake, get that picture. Louis Gohmert right there giving the president a little hug in a sign of support.
And they're also commenting to him. It's interesting to see who he stops to speak with.
Senator Mike Lee there. Senator Mike Lee of Utah, Mitt Romney, one of these cases where one senator, no surprise on how he would go with impeachment. Mitt Romney, so much more of a wild card, and you can see there the president shaking the hand of the Chief Justice, the man who's been presiding over his impeachment trial in the Senate. Going down the line to shake the hands of those Supreme Court justices, and there it is, Brett Kavanaugh, the man who the president put into office, two of President Trump's, both of his appointees there. But Brett Kavanaugh, such a contentious fight, a very symbolic moment, Rhonda.
Right. I mean, that vote for him has been following a lot of senators still. Susan Collins, Lisa Murkowski.
President Trump seeming to enjoy this moment as he hears the support. We'll bring this to you live from the Washington Post. And now for the President of the United States.
Members of Congress, the President of the United States.
Thank you very much. Madam Speaker, Mr. Vice President, members of Congress, the First Lady of the United States. And my fellow citizens, 3 years ago, we launched the Great American Comeback. Tonight, I stand before you to share the incredible results. Jobs are booming, incomes are soaring, poverty is plummeting, crime is falling, confidence is surging, and our country is thriving and highly respected again. America's enemies are on the run. America's fortunes are on the rise, and America's future is blazing bright. The years of economic decay are over. The days of our country being used, taken advantage of, and even scorned by other nations are long behind us. Gone too are the broken promises, jobless recoveries, tired platitudes, and constant excuses for the depletion of American wealth, power, and prestige. In just 3 short years, we have shattered the mentality of American decline, and we have rejected the downsizing of Americans' destiny. We have totally rejected the downsizing. We're moving forward at a pace that was unimaginable just a short time ago, and we are never, ever going back. I am thrilled to report to you tonight that our economy is the best it has ever been. Our military is completely rebuilt, with its power being unmatched anywhere in the world, and it's not even close. Our borders are secure. Our families are flourishing. Our values are renewed. Our pride is restored. And for all of these reasons, I say to the people of our great country, and to the members of Congress, the state of our union is stronger than ever before. The vision I will lay out this evening demonstrates how we are building the world's most prosperous and inclusive society, one where every citizen can join in America's unparalleled success, and where every community can take part in America's extraordinary rise. From the instant I took office, I moved rapidly to revive the U.S. economy, slashing a record number of job-killing regulations, enacting historic and record-setting tax cuts, and fighting for fair and reciprocal trade agreements. Our agenda is relentlessly pro-worker, pro-family, pro-growth, and most of all, pro-American. Thank you. We are advancing with unbridled optimism and lifting our citizens of every race, color, religion, and creed very, very high. Since my election, we have created 7 million new jobs, 5 million more than government experts projected during the previous administration. The unemployment rate is the lowest in over half a century. And very incredibly, the average unemployment rate under my administration is lower than any administration in the history of our country. Yeah. If we hadn't reversed the failed economic policies of the previous administration, the world would not now be witnessing this great economic success. The unemployment rate for African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Asian Americans has reached the lowest levels in history. African American youth unemployment has reached an all-time low. African American poverty has declined to the lowest rate ever recorded. The unemployment rate for women reached the lowest level in almost 70 years, and last year women filled 72% of all new jobs added. The veterans' unemployment rate dropped to a record low. The unemployment rate for disabled Americans has reached an all-time low. Workers without a high school diploma have achieved the lowest unemployment rate recorded in U.S. history. A record number of young Americans are now employed. Under the last administration, more than 10 million people were added to the food stamp rolls. Under my administration, 7 million Americans have come off food stamps, and 10 million people have been lifted off of welfare. In 8 years under the last administration, over 300,000 working-age people dropped out of the workforce. In just 3 years of my administration, 3.5 million people, working-age people, have joined the workforce. Since my election, the net worth of the bottom half of wage earners has increased by 47%, 3 times faster than the increase for the top 1%. After decades of flat and falling incomes, wages are rising fast, and wonderfully, they are rising fastest for low-income workers who have seen a 16% pay increase since my election. This is a blue-collar boom. Real median household income is now at the highest level ever recorded. Since my election, U.S. stock markets have soared 70%, adding more than $12 trillion to our nation's wealth, transcending anything anyone believed was possible. This is a record. It is something that every country in the world is looking up to. They admire. Consumer confidence has just reached amazing new highs. All of those millions of people with 401ks and pensions are doing far better than they have ever done before, with increases of 60, 70, 80, 90, and 100% and even more. Jobs and investments are pouring into 9,000 previously neglected neighborhoods, thanks to Opportunity Zones, a plan spearheaded by Senator Tim Scott as part of our great Republican tax cuts. In other words, wealthy people and companies are pouring money into poor neighborhoods or areas that haven't seen investment in many decades, creating jobs, energy, and excitement. This is the first time that these deserving communities have seen anything like this. It's all working. Opportunity zones are helping Americans like Army veteran Tony Rankins from Cincinnati, Ohio. After struggling with drug addiction, Tony lost his job, his house, and his family. He was homeless. But then Tony found a construction company that invests in opportunity zones. He is now a top tradesman, drug-free, reunited with his family, and he is here tonight. Tony, keep up the great work, Tony. Thank you, Tony. Our roaring economy has, for the first time ever, given many former prisoners the ability to get a great job and a fresh start. This second chance at life is made possible because we passed landmark criminal justice reform into law. Everybody said that criminal justice reform couldn't be done, but I got it done, and the people in this room got it done. Thanks to our bold regulatory reduction campaign, the United States has become the #1 producer of oil and natural gas anywhere in the world, by far. With the tremendous progress we have made over the past 3 years, America is now energy independent, and energy jobs, like so many other elements of our country, are at a record high. We are doing numbers that no one would have thought possible just 3 years ago. Likewise, we are restoring our nation's manufacturing might, even though predictions were, as you all know, that this could never, ever be done. After losing 60,000 factories under the previous 2 administrations, America has now gained 12,000 new factories under my administration, with thousands upon thousands of plants and factories being planned or being built. Companies are not leaving. They are coming back to the USA. The fact is that everybody wants to be where the action is, and the United States of America is indeed the place where the action is. One of the biggest promises I made to the American people was to replace the disastrous NAFTA trade deal. In fact, unfair trade is perhaps the single biggest reason that I decided to run for president. Following NAFTA's adoption, our nation lost 1 in 4 manufacturing jobs. Many politicians came and went pledging to change or replace NAFTA, only to do so, and then absolutely nothing happened. But unlike so many who came before me, I keep my promises. We did our job. Six days ago, I replaced NAFTA and signed the brand new U.S.-Mexico-Canada agreement into law. the USMCA will create nearly 100,000 new high-paying American auto jobs and massively boost exports for our farmers, ranchers, and factory workers. It will also bring trade with Mexico and Canada to a much higher level, but also to be a much greater degree of fairness and reciprocity. We will have that fairness and reciprocity, and I say that finally because it's been many, many years that we were treated fairly on trade. This is the first major trade deal in many years to earn the strong backing of America's labor unions. I also promised our citizens that I would impose tariffs to confront China's massive theft of America's jobs. Our strategy has worked. Days ago, we signed the groundbreaking new agreement with China that will defend our workers, protect our intellectual property, bring billions and billions of dollars into our treasury, and open vast new markets for products made and grown right here in the USA. For decades, China has taken advantage of the United States. Now we have changed that. But at the same time, we have perhaps the best relationship we've ever had with China, including with President Xi. They respect what we've done because, quite frankly, they could never really believe that they were able to get away with what they were doing year after year, decade after decade, without someone in our country stepping up and saying, "That's enough." Now we want to rebuild our country, and that's exactly what we're doing. We are rebuilding our country. As we restore American leadership throughout the world, we are once again standing up for freedom in our hemisphere. That's why my administration reversed the failing policies of the previous administration on Cuba. We are supporting the hopes of Cubans, Nicaraguans, and Venezuelans to restore democracy. The United States is leading a 59-nation diplomatic coalition against the socialist dictator of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro. Maduro is an illegitimate ruler, a tyrant who brutalizes his people, but Maduro's grip on tyranny will be smashed and broken. Here this evening is a very brave man who carries with him the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of all Venezuelans. Joining us in the gallery is the true and legitimate president of Venezuela, Juan Guaido. Mr. President, please take this message back to your homeland. Thank you, Mr. President. Great honor. Thank you very much. Please take this message back that all Americans are united with the Venezuelan people in their righteous struggle for freedom. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Thank you very much. Socialism destroys nations, but always remember freedom unifies the soul. To safeguard American liberty, we have invested a record-breaking $2.2 trillion in the United States military. We have purchased the finest planes, missiles, rockets, ships, and every other form of military equipment, and it's all made right here in the USA. We are also getting our allies, finally, to help pay their fair share. I have raised contributions from other NATO members by more than $400 billion, and the number of allies meeting their minimum obligations has more than doubled. And just weeks ago, for the first time since President Truman established the Air Force, more than 70 years earlier, we created a brand new branch of the United States Armed Forces. It's called the Space Force. Very important. In the gallery tonight, we have a young gentleman, and what he wants so badly, 13 years old, Ian Lawnfay. He's an 8th grader from Arizona. Ian, please stand up. Ian has always dreamed of going to space. He was the first in his class and among the youngest at an aviation academy. He aspires to go to the Air Force Academy, and then he has his eye on the Space Force. As Ian says, most people look up at space. I want to look down on the world. But sitting behind Ian tonight is his greatest hero of them all. Charles McGee was born in Cleveland, Ohio, 1 century ago. Charles is one of the last surviving Tuskegee Airmen, the first black fighter pilots, and he also happens to be Ian's great-grandfather. Incredible story. After more than 130 combat missions in World War II, he came back home to a country still struggling for civil rights and went on to serve America in Korea and Vietnam. On December 7th, Charles celebrated his 100th birthday. A few weeks ago, I signed a bill promoting Charles McGee to Brigadier General, and earlier today, I pinned the stars on his shoulders in the Oval Office General McGee, our nation salutes you. Thank you, sir. From the Pilgrims to the founders, from the soldiers at Valley Forge to the marchers at Selma, and from President Lincoln to the Reverend Martin Luther King, Americans have always rejected limits on our children's future. Members of Congress, we must never forget that the only victories that matter in Washington are victories that deliver for the American people. The people are the heart of our country. Their dreams are the soul of our country, and their love is what powers and sustains our country. We must always remember that our job is to put America first. The next step forward in building an inclusive society is making sure that every young American gets a great education and the opportunity to achieve the American dream. Yet for too long, countless American children have been trapped in failing government schools. To rescue these students, 18 states have created school choice in the form of opportunity scholarships. The programs are so popular that tens of thousands of students remain on a waiting list. One of those students is Janiyah Davis, a fourth grader from Philadelphia. Janiyah. Janiyah's mom, Stephanie, is a single parent. She would do anything to give her daughter a better future. But last year, that future was put further out of reach when Pennsylvania's governor vetoed legislation to expand school choice to 50,000 children. Janiyah and Stephanie are in the gallery. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here with your beautiful daughter. Thank you very much. But Janiyah, I have some good news for you, because I am pleased to inform you that your long wait is over. I can proudly announce tonight that an opportunity scholarship has become available. It's going to you, and you will soon be heading to the school of your choice. Now I call on Congress to give 1 million American children the same opportunity Janiyah has just received. Pass the Education Freedom Scholarships and Opportunities Act, because no parent should be forced to send their child to a failing government school. Every young person should have a safe and secure environment in which to learn and to grow. For this reason, our magnificent First Lady has launched the Be Best initiative to advance a safe, healthy, supportive, and drug-free life for the next generation. Online, in school, and in our communities. Thank you, Melania, for your extraordinary love and profound care for America's children. Thank you very much. My administration is determined to give our citizens the opportunities they need, regardless of age or background. Through our pledge to American workers, over 400 companies will also provide new jobs and education opportunities to almost 15 million Americans. My budget also contains an exciting vision for our nation's high schools. Tonight, I ask Congress to support our students and back my plan to offer vocational and technical education in every single high school in America. To expand equal opportunity, I am also proud that we achieved record and permanent funding for our nation's historically black colleges and universities. A good life for American families also requires the most affordable, innovative, and high-quality health care system on earth. Before I took office, health insurance premiums had more than doubled in just 5 years. I moved quickly to provide affordable alternatives. Our new plans are up to 60% less expensive and better. I've also made an ironclad pledge to American families. We will always protect patients with pre-existing conditions. And we will always protect your Medicare, and we will always protect your Social Security, always. The American patient should never be blindsided by medical bills. That is why I signed an executive order requiring price transparency. Many experts believe that transparency, which will go into full effect at the beginning of next year, will be even bigger than health care reform. It will save families massive amounts of money for substantially better care. But as we work to improve Americans' health care, there are those who want to take away your health care, take away your doctor, and abolish private insurance entirely. 132 lawmakers in this room have endorsed legislation to impose a socialist takeover of our health care system, wiping out the private health insurance plans of 180 million very happy Americans. To those watching at home tonight, I want you to know we will never let socialism destroy American health care. Over 130 legislators in this chamber have endorsed legislation that would bankrupt our nation by providing free taxpayer-funded health care to millions of illegal aliens, forcing taxpayers to subsidize free care for anyone in the world who unlawfully crosses our borders. These proposals would raid the Medicare benefits of our seniors and that our seniors depend on, while acting as a powerful lure for illegal immigration. That is what is happening in California and other states. Their systems are totally out of control, costing taxpayers vast and unaffordable amounts of money. If forcing American taxpayers to provide unlimited free health care to illegal aliens sounds fair to you, then stand with the radical left. But if you believe that we should defend American patients and American seniors, then stand with me and pass legislation to prohibit free government health care for illegal aliens. This will be a tremendous boon to our already very strongly guarded southern border, where, as we speak, a long, tall, and very powerful wall is being built. We have now completed over 100 miles and have over 500 miles fully completed in a very short period of time. Early next year, we will have substantially more than 500 miles completed. My administration is also taking on the big pharmaceutical companies. We have approved a record number of affordable generic drugs, and medicines are being approved by the FDA at a faster clip than ever before. And I was pleased to announce last year that for the first time in 51 years, the cost of prescription drugs actually went down. And working together, Congress can reduce drug prices substantially from current levels. I've been speaking to Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa and others in Congress in order to get something on drug pricing done, and done quickly and properly. I'm calling for bipartisan legislation that achieves the goal of dramatically lowering prescription drug prices. Get a bill on my desk and I will sign it into law immediately. With unyielding commitment, we are curbing the opioid epidemic. Drug overdose deaths declined for the first time in nearly 30 years. Among the states hardest hit, Ohio is down 22%, Pennsylvania is down 18%, Wisconsin is down 10%, and we will not quit until we have beaten the opioid epidemic once and for all. Protecting Americans' health also means fighting infectious diseases. We are coordinating with the Chinese government and working closely together on the coronavirus outbreak in China. My administration will take all necessary steps to safeguard our citizens from this threat. We have launched ambitious new initiatives to substantially improve care for Americans with kidney disease, Alzheimer's, and those struggling with mental health. And because Congress was so good as to fund my request, new cures for childhood cancer, and we will eradicate the AIDS epidemic in America by the end of this decade. Almost every American family knows the pain when a loved one is diagnosed with a serious illness. Here tonight is a special man, beloved by millions of Americans, who just received a stage 4 advanced cancer diagnosis. This is not good news, but what is good news is that he is the greatest fighter and winner that you will ever meet. Rush Limbaugh, thank you for your decades of tireless devotion to our country. And Rush, in recognition of all that you have done for our nation, the millions of people a day that you speak to and that you inspire, and all of the incredible work that you have done for charity, I am proud to announce tonight that you will be receiving our country's highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. I will now ask the First Lady of the United States to present you with the honor, please. Rush and Catherine, congratulations. Thank you, Catherine. As we pray for all who are sick, we know that America is constantly achieving new medical breakthroughs. In 2017, doctors at St. Luke's Hospital in Kansas City delivered one of the earliest premature babies ever to survive. Born at just 21 weeks and 6 days and weighing less than a pound, Ellie Schneider was a born fighter. Through the skill of her doctors and the prayers of her parents, little Ellie kept on winning the battle of life. Today, Ellie is a strong, healthy 2-year-old girl sitting with her amazing mother, Robin. In the gallery, Ellie and Robin, we are glad to have you with us tonight. Ellie reminds us that every child is a miracle of life. And thanks to modern medical wonders, 50% of very premature babies delivered at the hospital where Ellie was born now survive. It's an incredible thing. Thank you very much. Our goal should be to ensure that every baby has the best chance to thrive and grow just like Ellie. That is why I'm asking Congress to provide an additional $50 million to fund neonatal research for America's youngest patients. That is why I'm also calling upon members of Congress here tonight to pass legislation finally banning the late-term abortion of babies. Whether we are Republican, Democrat, or Independent, surely we must all agree that every human life is a sacred gift from God. As we support America's moms and dads, I was recently proud to sign the law providing new parents in the federal workforce paid family leave, serving as a model for the rest of the country. Now I call on Congress to pass the bipartisan Advancing Support for Working Families Act, extending family leave to mothers and fathers all across our nation. $40 million American families have an average $2,200 extra thanks to our child tax credit. I've also overseen historic funding increases for high-quality child care, enabling 17 states to help more children, many of which have reduced or eliminated their wait lists altogether. And I sent Congress a plan with a vision to further expand access to high-quality child care and urge you to act immediately. To protect the environment, days ago, I announced that the United States will join the 1 Trillion Trees Initiative, an ambitious effort to bring together government and private sector to plant new trees in America and all around the world. We must also rebuild America's infrastructure. I ask you to pass Senator John Barrasso's highway bill to invest in new roads, bridges, and tunnels all across our land. I'm also committed to ensuring that every citizen can have access to high-speed internet, including and especially in rural America. A better tomorrow for all Americans also requires us to keep America safe. That means supporting the men and women of law enforcement at every level, including our nation's heroic ICE officers. Last year, our brave ICE officers arrested more than 120,000 criminal aliens charged with nearly 10,000 burglaries, 5,000 sexual assaults, 45,000 violent assaults, and 2,000 murders. Tragically, there are many cities in America where radical politicians have chosen to provide sanctuary for these criminal, illegal aliens. In sanctuary cities, local officials order police to release dangerous criminal aliens to prey upon the public instead of handing them over to ICE to be safely removed. Just 29 days ago, a criminal alien freed by the sanctuary city of New York was charged with the brutal rape and murder of a 92-year-old woman. The killer had been previously arrested for assault, but under New York sanctuary policies, he was set free. If the city had honored ICE's detainer request, his victim would still be alive today. The state of California passed an outrageous law declaring their whole state to be a sanctuary for criminal, illegal immigrants, a very terrible sanctuary with catastrophic results. Here is just one tragic example. In December 2018, California police detained an illegal alien with 5 prior arrests, including convictions for robbery and assault. But as required by California's sanctuary law, local authorities released him. Days later, the criminal alien went on a gruesome spree of deadly violence. He viciously shot one man going about his daily work. He approached a woman sitting in her car and shot her in the arm and in the chest. He walked into a convenience store and wildly fired his weapon. He hijacked a truck and smashed into vehicles, critically injuring innocent victims. One of the victims is a terrible, terrible situation. Died, 51-year-old American named Rocky Jones. Rocky was at a gas station when this vile criminal fired 8 bullets at him from close range, murdering him in cold blood. Rocky left behind a devoted family, including his brothers, who loved him more than anything else in the world. One of his grieving brothers is here with us tonight. Jody, would you please stand? Jody, thank you. Jody, our hearts weep for your loss, and we will not rest until you have justice. Senator Tom Tillis has introduced legislation to allow Americans like Jody to sue sanctuary cities and states when a loved one is hurt or killed as a result of these deadly practices. I ask Congress to pass the Justice for Victims of Sanctuary Cities Act immediately. The United States of America should be a sanctuary for law-abiding Americans, not criminal aliens. In the last 3 years, ICE has arrested over 5,000 wicked human traffickers, and I have signed 9 pieces of legislation to stamp out the menace of human trafficking domestically and all around the globe. My administration has undertaken an unprecedented effort to secure the southern border of the United States. Before I came into office, if you showed up illegally on our southern border and were arrested, you were simply released and allowed into our country, never to be seen again. My administration has ended catch and release. If you come illegally, you will now be promptly removed from our country. Very importantly, we entered into historic cooperation agreements with the governments of Mexico, Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala. As a result of our unprecedented efforts, illegal crossings are down 75% since May. dropping 8 straight months in a row. And as the wall rapidly goes up, drug seizures rise, and the border crossings are going down and going down very rapidly. Last year, I traveled to the border in Texas and met Chief Patrol Agent Raul Ortiz. Over the last 24 months, Agent Ortiz and his team have seized more than 200,000 pounds of poisonous narcotics, arrested more than 3,000 human smugglers, and rescued more than 2,000 migrants. Days ago, Agent Ortiz was promoted to Deputy Chief of Border Patrol, and he joins us tonight. Chief Ortiz, please stand. A grateful nation thanks you and all of the heroes of Border Patrol and ICE. Thank you very much. Thank you. To build on these historic gains, we are working on legislation to replace our outdated and randomized immigration system with one based on merit, welcoming those who follow the rules, contribute to our economy, support themselves financially, and uphold our values. With every action, my administration is restoring the rule of law and reasserting the culture of American freedom. Working with Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, thank you, Mitch, and his colleagues in the Senate, we have confirmed a record number of 187 new federal judges to uphold our Constitution as written. This includes 2 brilliant new Supreme Court justices, Neil Gorsuch and Brett Kavanaugh. Thank you. And we have many in the pipeline. My administration is also defending religious liberty, and that includes the constitutional right to pray in public schools. In America, we don't punish prayer. We don't tear down crosses. We don't ban symbols of faith. We don't muzzle preachers and pastors. In America, we celebrate faith. We cherish religion. We lift our voices in prayer, and we raise our sights to the glory of God. Just as we believe in the First Amendment, we also believe in another constitutional right that is under siege all across our country. So long as I am president, I will always protect your Second Amendment right to keep and bear arms. In reaffirming our heritage as a free nation, we must remember that America has always been a frontier nation. Now we must embrace the next frontier, America's manifest destiny in the stars. I am asking Congress to fully fund the Artemis program to ensure that the next man and the first woman on the moon will be American astronauts, using this as a launching pad to ensure that America is the first nation to plant its flag on Mars. My administration is also strongly defending our national security and combating radical Islamic terrorism. Last week, I announced a groundbreaking plan for peace between Israel and the Palestinians. Recognizing that all past attempts have failed, we must be determined and creative in order to stabilize the region and give millions of young people the chance to realize a better future. 3 years ago, the barbarians of ISIS held over 20,000 square miles of territory in Iraq and Syria. Today, the ISIS territorial caliphate has been 100% destroyed, and the founder and leader of ISIS, the bloodthirsty killer known as al-Baghdadi, is dead. We are joined this evening by Carl and Marcia Mueller. After graduating from college, their beautiful daughter, Carla, became a humanitarian aid worker. She once wrote, "Some people find God in church, some people find God in nature, some people find God in love. I find God in suffering. I've known for some time what my life's work is, using my hands as tools to relieve suffering." In 2013, while caring for suffering civilians in Syria, Kayla was kidnapped, tortured, and enslaved by ISIS and kept as a prisoner of al-Baghdadi himself. After more than 500 horrifying days of captivity, al-Baghdadi murdered young, beautiful Kayla. She was just 26 years old. On the night that U.S. Special Forces operations ended al-Baghdadi's miserable life, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, received a call in the Situation Room. He was told that the brave men of the elite Special Forces team that so perfectly carried out the operation had given their mission a name, Task Force 814. It was a reference to a special day, August 14th, Kayla's birthday. Carl and Marcia, America's warriors, never forgot Kayla, and neither will we. Thank you. Every day, America's men and women in uniform demonstrate the infinite depth of love that dwells in the human heart. One of these American heroes was Army Staff Sergeant Christopher Hake. On his second deployment to Iraq in 2008, Sergeant Hake wrote a letter to his one-year-old son, Gage. "I will be with you again," he wrote to Gage. "I will teach you to ride your first bike, build your first sandbox, watch you play sports, and see you have kids also. I love you, son. Take care of your mother. I am always with you, Daddy." On Easter Sunday of 2008, Chris was out on patrol in Baghdad when his Bradley fighting vehicle was hit by a roadside bomb. That night, he made the ultimate sacrifice for our country. Sergeant Hake now rests in eternal glory in Arlington, and his wife, Kelly, is in the gallery tonight, joined by their son, who is now a 13-year-old and doing very, very well. To Kelly and Gage, Chris will live in our hearts forever. He is looking down on you now. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you both very much. The terrorist responsible for killing Sergeant Hake was Qasem Soleimani, who provided the deadly roadside bomb that took Chris's life. Soleimani was the Iranian regime's most ruthless butcher, a monster who murdered or wounded thousands of American service members in Iraq. As the world's top terrorist, Soleimani orchestrated the deaths of countless men, women, and children. He directed the December assault and went on to assault U.S. forces in Iraq, was actively planning new attacks when we hit him very hard. And that's why last month, at my direction, the U.S. military executed a flawless precision strike that killed Soleimani and terminated his evil reign of terror forever. Our message to the terrorists is clear. You will never escape American justice. If you attack our citizens, you forfeit your life. In recent months, we have seen proud Iranians raise their voices against their oppressive rulers. The Iranian regime must abandon its pursuit of nuclear weapons, stop spreading terror, death, and destruction, and start working for the good of its own people. Because of our powerful sanctions, the Iranian economy is doing very, very poorly. We can help them make a very good and short-time recovery. It can all go very quickly, but perhaps they are too proud or too foolish to ask for that help. We are here. Let's see which road they choose. It is totally up to them. As we defend American lives, we are working to end America's wars in the Middle East. In Afghanistan, the determination and valor of our warfighters has allowed us to make tremendous progress, and peace talks are now underway. I am not looking to kill hundreds of thousands of people in Afghanistan, many of them totally innocent. It is also not our function to serve other nations as law enforcement agencies. These are warfighters that we have, the best in the world, and they either want to fight to win or not fight at all. We are working to finally end America's longest war and bring our troops back home. War places a heavy burden on our nation's extraordinary military families, especially spouses like Amy Williams from Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and her two children, 6-year-old Eliana and 3-year-old Rowan. Amy works full-time and volunteers countless hours, helping other military families. For the past 7 months, she has done it all while her husband, Sergeant First Class Townsend Williams, is in Afghanistan on his 4th deployment in the Middle East. Amy's kids haven't seen their father's face in many months. Amy, your family's sacrifice makes it possible for all of our families to live in safety and in peace, and we want to thank you. Thank you, Amy. But Amy, there is one more thing. Tonight we have a very special surprise. I am thrilled to inform you that your husband is back from deployment. He is here with us tonight, and we couldn't keep him waiting any longer. Welcome home, Sergeant Williams. Thank you very much. As the world bears witness tonight, America is a land of heroes. This is a place where greatness is born, where destinies are forged, and where legends come to life. This is the home of Thomas Edison and Teddy Roosevelt, of many great generals, including Washington, Pershing, Patton, and MacArthur. This is the home of Abraham Lincoln, Frederick Douglass, Amelia Earhart, Harriet Tubman, the Wright brothers, Neil Armstrong, and so many more. This is the country where children learn names like Wyatt Earp, Davy Crockett, and Annie Oakley. This is the place where the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth and where Texas patriots made their last stand at the Alamo. The beautiful, beautiful Alamo. The American nation was carved out of the vast frontier by the toughest, strongest, fiercest, and most determined men and women ever to walk on the face of the earth. Our ancestors braved the unknown, tamed the wilderness, settled the Wild West, lifted millions from poverty, disease, and hunger, vanquished tyranny and fascism, ushered the world to new heights of science and medicine, laid down the railroads, dug out the canals, raised up the skyscrapers, and ladies and gentlemen, our ancestors built the most exceptional republic ever to exist in all of human history, and we are making it greater than ever before. This is our glorious and magnificent inheritance. We are Americans. We are the pathfinders. We settled the new world. We built the modern world. And we changed history forever by embracing the eternal truth that everyone is made equal by the hand of Almighty God. America is the place where anything can happen. America is the place where anyone can rise. And here, on this land, on this soil, on this continent, the most incredible dreams come true. This nation is our canvas, and this country is our masterpiece. We look at tomorrow and see unlimited frontiers just waiting to be explored. Our brightest discoveries are not yet known. Our most thrilling stories are not yet told. Our grandest journeys are not yet made. The American age, the American epic, the American adventure has only just begun. Our spirit is still young. The sun is still rising. God's grace is still shining. And my fellow Americans, the best is yet to come. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America. Thank you very much.
President Trump touting a nation of strength and promise, a strong economy, and yet delivering a message that was incredibly divisive in this split chamber. Speaker Pelosi tearing up the speech as the president left the dais and walked down. The president's shaking the hands of his supporters, members of the House and Senate on the Republican side of the aisle who are greeting him as he leaves the chamber. Many standing ovations, of course, on the Republican side, but so much concern from the Democrats that we even saw some members of the House Democrats walk out. This is live coverage from the Washington Post. We'll continue to look at these images of the president leaving the chamber. So many made-for-TV moments tonight that the president scripted and constructed, pinning the Medal of Freedom on Rush Limbaugh, reuniting a soldier's family. I'm Libby Casey. I'm joined by my colleague, Rhonda Colvin. Rhonda will await the Democratic response in just a few moments. You can see behind us in Statuary Hall members of the House and Senate pouring out of the House chamber to come in here and do news hits. We're right in the middle of the action here, so you'll see a lot of activity, but we'll continue to talk about and digest what we heard tonight. Rhonda, what stands out to you?
You know, just to follow up on what you just said, there were a lot of made-for-TV moments. There was the soldier that was reunited in a surprise way with his family. There was also a young girl that received a scholarship. I mean, there were moments that are hard to, go up against as a Democrat. They were very human moments too. What stands out to me is, one, this speech was about the same length as last year. We weren't sure if it was going to be shorter or longer. It was about that hour and a half mark. About a quarter of it, he spent a lot of time talking about the economy, talking about job growth, talking about the unemployment rate and how it applies to minorities. A lot of his guests, actually, if you were paying attention to the guests, many of them were people of color. So I think he really wanted to bring home, especially in the beginning of this speech, bring home some of the things that he feels have been triumphs for him in the last year.
Absolutely. Also doubling down on some policies that are controversial, doubling down on the wall policy, saying that he wants to see those 500 miles of construction done by the new year. But that is something that DHS and others have real concerns about internally, about whether or not they can get anywhere close to that, Rhonda.
That's right. I mean, let's remember last year we were standing in this same spot, that the border wall policy was what had shut down the government for over a month. So that, again, if you looked at the faces of a lot of Democrats, that was not a moment that they were very pleased with. And you're probably going to hear a little bit more about that later on tonight when we hear reaction from lawmakers tomorrow. That, and also when he went after health care. Now, this morning, Nancy Pelosi, Senator Schumer, also Representative Hoyer, they had over 80 doctors and patients who have benefited from the ACA. From their view, they had them here as guests. So for the fact that he spent part of his early part of the speech talking about health care and how he said he will not allow socialists to do anything to your health care, you could tell Nancy Pelosi took issue with that.
Absolutely. We actually heard boos from inside the chamber as he went after Democrats directly, saying 132 members of this chamber had endorsed legislation that was a socialist takeover of the healthcare system, also talking about how those members of the chamber wanted to bankrupt the nation by giving health care to quote-unquote illegal aliens. You heard some chants from Democrats inside chanting H.R. 3, legislation Democrats want to do, but just so many shakes of the head as Democrats push back against what President Trump was talking about, but also some of the things that he was taking credit for have not been borne out. And so real questions about how he backs up some of the claims he made tonight. But, Rhonda, you're so wise to point out that there was this pivot to socialism quite a few times tonight.
Yeah.
And, one of the surprises of the evening was to see Juan Guaido, the president in waiting in Venezuela, of course, going up against Nicolas Maduro. Juan Guaido got a standing ovation. Speaker Pelosi stood, Democrats, Republicans all stood and cheered for him. But then President Trump used that to pivot to a critique of socialism. We, of course, know socialism is a word that the president's using to kind of throw a rope around the Democratic candidates running for president. So he kept trying to hit that. And, even in moments when there was unity, it very quickly split into a very divisive message.
That's right. I mean, part of the speech, too, you have to remember he is in active campaign mode. So a lot of the speech, he really wanted to
to hit home things that he feels are going to resonate with people on the campaign trail. You know, you heard a little bit of campaign President Trump and then, you know, sitting President Trump. So yeah, that was very interesting.
So a reminder that we will be bringing you the Democratic response in just a few moments. Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer will give that. That is a tradition, of course, every year. The opposing party, the one that's not in the seat of the presidency, gives a speech, and so we will carry that. It's always interesting to see who Democrats choose for that moment. This time, the governor of a state that a lot of people are interested in, where it goes in terms of the presidential race and how it fits into the national scene. You know, issues like trade, issues like manufacturing were things that the president brought up tonight. That's something that appeals to people in Michigan as well as other parts of the country, Rhonda.
That's true, and also the response, the Democratic response is in Spanish language is coming from Representative Escobar of El Paso, and we know she is a very big critic of the president on gun control measures and also immigration. So she was chosen too by leadership to give the Spanish language response.
And you mentioned gun legislation. One of the most contentious moments of the night was when President Trump mentioned the Second Amendment, and we saw a big reaction from Democrats in the chamber. We'll be talking about that more this evening as we digest and analyze just what happened. I want to mention that when we see Gretchen Whitmer, it will be in front of a live group of people, so this will be an address that she's given. Democrats, as well as Republicans in past years, have had to try to figure out what makes the best messaging. You know, is it someone staring down the barrel of a camera and talking directly to camera? Is it having that live audience feel to have some warmth and dynamism? So we'll see just what the Democrats want to push back on. They have to be aware of how they give a counter message here to the president, but also how they give a message that jumps forward the Democratic agenda, as it doesn't just dwell on what President Trump's done, but show Americans that the Democrats have their own desires of what they want to do and what they can do, not just here in Congress, but in the White House. So we'll be tuning into that in just a moment. Afterwards, we'll come back to Statuary Hall. We'll be right here. I'm Libby Casey with Rhonda Colvin. Stay with us as we go to Michigan.
I'm grateful that you're tuning in. I'm Gretchen Whitmer, the 49th governor of the great state of Michigan. Tonight, I'm at my daughters Sherry and Sydney's public school, East Lansing High School. We're here today with families and parents, teachers, and most importantly, students. I want to thank you all for coming, but tonight I'm going to talk to those of you who are watching at home. I'd need a lot more than 10 minutes to respond to what the president just said. So instead of talking about what he is saying, I'm going to highlight what Democrats are doing. After all, you can listen to what someone says, but to know the truth, watch what they do. Michiganders are no different from Americans everywhere. We love our families and want a good life today and a better life tomorrow for our kids. We work hard, and we expect our government to work hard for us as well. We have grit and value loyalty, and we still root for the Detroit Lions. We and all Americans might be weary of today's politics, but we must stay engaged. Our country, our democracy, our future demand it. We're capable of great things when we work together. We cannot forget that despite the dishonesty and division of the last few years, and that we heard tonight from the President of the United States, together we have boundless potential. And young Americans are proving that every day by taking action. That's what I want to focus on tonight. Monty Scott is 13 years old and lives in Muskegon Heights, Michigan. Monty Street was covered in potholes. They were ankle deep, and he got tired of waiting for them to get fixed. So he grabbed a shovel and a bucket of dirt and filled them in himself. During my campaign, people told me to fix the damn roads, because blown tires and broken windshields are downright dangerous. And car repairs take money from rent, childcare, or groceries. And we, the Democrats, are doing something about it. In Illinois, Governor J.B. Pritzker passed a multi-billion-dollar plan to rebuild their roads and bridges. Governor Phil Murphy is replacing lead pipes in New Jersey. All across the country, Democratic leaders are rebuilding bridges, fixing roads, expanding broadband, and cleaning up drinking water. Everyone in this country benefits when we invest in infrastructure. Congressional Democrats have presented proposals to keep us moving forward. But President Trump and the Republicans in the Senate are blocking the path. When it comes to infrastructure, Monty has tried to do more with a shovel and a pile of dirt than the Republicans in D.C. have with the Oval Office and the U.S. Senate. Bullying people on Twitter doesn't fix bridges. It burns them. Our energy should be used to solve problems. And it's true for healthcare too. For me, for so many Americans, healthcare is personal, not political. When I was 30, I became a member of the sandwich generation. That means I was sandwiched between two generations of my own family for whom I was the primary caregiver. I was holding down a new job, caring for my newborn daughter, as well as my mom at the end of her brain cancer battle. I was up all night with a baby, and during the day, I had to fight my mom's insurance company when they wrongly denied her coverage for chemotherapy. It was hard. It exposed the harsh realities of our workplaces, our healthcare system, and our child care system. And it changed me. I lost patience for people who are just talk and no action. So as a state senator, I worked with a Republican governor and legislature to expand healthcare coverage to more than 680,000 Michiganders under the Affordable Care Act. Today, Democrats from Maine to Montana are expanding coverage and lowering costs. In Kansas, Governor Laura Kelly is working across the aisle to bring Medicaid coverage to tens of thousands. In New Mexico, Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham enshrined ACA protections into law. Every Democrat running for president has a plan to expand health care for all Americans. Every one of them has supported the Affordable Care Act with coverage for people with pre-existing conditions. They may have different plans, but the goal is the same. President Trump sadly has a different plan. He's asking the courts to rip those life-saving protections away. It's pretty simple. Democrats are trying to make your health care better. Republicans in Washington are trying to take it away. Think about kids like 17-year-old Blake Carroll from Idaho, who organized a fundraiser to pay for his mom's colon cancer treatment. Or 19-year-old Ebony Myers from Utah, who sells art to help pay for her own rare genetic disorder treatment. No one should have to crowdsource their health care, not in America. But the reality is, not everyone in America has a job with health care and benefits. In fact, many have jobs that don't even pay enough to cover their monthly expenses. It doesn't matter what the president says about the stock market. What matters is that millions of people struggle to get by or don't have enough money at the end of the month after paying for transportation, student loans, or prescription drugs. American workers are hurting. In my own state, our neighbors in Wisconsin and Ohio, Pennsylvania, and all over the country. Wages have stagnated while CEO pay has skyrocketed. So when the president says the economy is strong, my question is, strong for whom? Strong for the wealthy who are reaping rewards from tax cuts they don't need? The American economy needs to be a different kind of strong. Strong for the science teacher spending her own money to buy supplies for her classroom. Strong for the single mom picking up extra hours so she can afford her daughter's soccer cleats. Strong for the small business owner who has to make payroll at the end of the month. Michigan invented the middle class, so we know if the economy doesn't work for working people, it just doesn't work. Who fights for hardworking Americans? Democrats do. In the U.S. House, Speaker Nancy Pelosi and Democrats passed a landmark bill on equal pay, another bill to give 30 million Americans a raise by increasing the minimum wage, and groundbreaking legislation to finally give Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices for America's seniors and families. Those three bills and more than 275 other bipartisan bills are just gathering dust on Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell's desk. Senator McConnell, America needs you to move those bills. Meanwhile, Democrats across the country are getting things done. Pennsylvania's Governor Tom Wolf is expanding the right to overtime pay. Michigan is too. Because if you're on the clock, you deserve to get paid. Nevada Governor Steve Sisolak and North Carolina Governor Roy Cooper are working to give hard-working teachers a raise. And speaking of the classroom, Wisconsin Governor Tony Evers unilaterally increased school funding by $65 million last year. In Colorado, Governor Jared Polis has enacted free all-day kindergarten. And in 29 states, we've helped pass minimum wage hikes into law, which will lift people out of poverty and improve lives for families. That's strength. That's action. Democracy takes action. And that's why I'm so inspired by young people. They respond to mass shootings, demanding policies that make schools safer. They react to a world that's literally on fire, with fire in their bellies, to push leaders to finally take action on climate change. They take on a road filled with potholes with a shovel and some dirt. It's what gives me great confidence in our future. And it's why sometimes it feels like they're the adults in the room. But it shouldn't have to be that way. It's not their mess to clean up. It's ours. The choices we make today create their reality tomorrow. Young people, I'm talking to you and your parents and grandparents. Democrats want safe schools. We want everyone to have a path to a good life, whether it's through a union apprenticeship, a community college, a four-year university, without drowning in debt. We want your water to be clean. We want you to love who you love and to live authentically as your true selves. And we want women to have autonomy over our bodies. We want our country welcoming and everyone's vote counted. 2020 is a big year. It's the year my daughter Sherry will graduate from high school. It's also the year she'll cast her first ballot, along with millions of young Americans. The two things are connected, because walking across a graduation stage is as important as walking into the voting booth for the first time. Her future, all our kids' futures, will be determined not just by their dreams, but by our actions. As we witness the impeachment process in Washington, there are some things each of us, no matter our party, should demand. The truth matters. Facts matter. And no one should be above the law. It's not what those senators say. Tomorrow, it's about what they do that matters. Remember, listen to what people say, but watch what they do. It's time for action. Generations of Americans are counting on us. Let's not let them down. Thank you for listening. God bless America. Good night.
The Democratic response by Michigan Governor. You're watching live coverage of the State of the Union and the Democratic response by the Washington Post. I'm Libby Casey with Rhonda Colvin, and we've got Republican Congressman Ben Cline with us, who represents Virginia's 6th District. Congressman, thanks for talking with us. Give us your impressions of this president's speech tonight.
Oh, he knocked it out of the park. He spoke past all the members of Congress and all the bureaucracy, spoke right to the American people and talked about the issues that were important to them, whether it's health care or securing our border or winning the war on terror. He just knocked it out of the park.
You know, he had some messages about American greatness, but he also talked about some very divisive topics, choosing to basically call Democrats socialists, say Democrats trying to threaten your health care, talking about illegal aliens, and then bringing up the Second Amendment, which upset some in the chamber. What is your thoughts on that?
These are issues that are important to my constituents: securing our border, protecting life, protecting our constitutional rights to keep and bear arms. These are important issues to the people in my district, and they sent me here to address those issues. So that's what I'm going to keep fighting for, and I'm going to partner with the president however I can to get these issues accomplished.
Congressman, given that the Senate vote is tomorrow on impeachment, are you surprised, or do you think he should have addressed it blatantly in his speech?
Well, I think the president did a great job of addressing the issues that are important to the American people. The senators were all there. The managers all tried to sit together. You know, that kind of drama doesn't faze the president one bit. He's going to speak directly to the American people. And when Nancy Pelosi wants to be petty and rip up his speech right over his head after he finishes, you know, he's not even going to worry about it. He's going to go right back to addressing the issues that are important to the American people.
At the very beginning, when he first came in, Speaker Pelosi tried to shake his hand. He didn't shake her hand. We don't know if that was intentional or just a misstep. What's your response to that?
I didn't see that, but he'll have the best response to that.
So we are hearing from the president that he does want to talk about impeachment tomorrow. Are you concerned that he might lose the momentum of tonight, talking about the economy and things that your constituents care about, and get mired back into this impeachment drama?
No, I have no doubt that the momentum from tonight is going to last beyond tomorrow, well on into the fall and past November.
All right, thank you,
Congressman Klein. Thanks for
Thank
talking
you all
with us.
very much.
Appreciate that. So you're hearing there a very positive Republican response. Again, that's a congressman from Virginia in the Shenandoah region. Clearly very pumped, Rhonda, that he heard that. We're seeing a lot of members of Congress behind us wearing white.
They
women
exit
who are
very
on the
quickly.
Democratic side of the caucus, though. I see one right behind us who Democrats have had a very different perspective and a different read on that tonight. And we will get some Democrats to voice their opinions about just what they think happened tonight. Rhonda, it's so interesting to hear the congressman talk in such glowing terms of absolutely hit it out of the park. Even though the president did have these very sort of divisive moments in the speech.
Yeah, but there were moments that I think Democrats did get behind when there was mention of, incarceration reform. That did appeal to a bipartisan, sensitivities. So, there were a few moments where he did strike tones where they did clap. So, the Democrats did clap. So, and I think we have somebody new with us, actually. Senator Hirono Mazie Hirono of Hawaii.
Hello. Senator Hirono, hi. I'm going to come down to your level.
That's good.
So we're literally on the same
like
level.
giantess.
So we just heard a very glowing take about this speech.
From who?
From one of the Republicans who said that President Trump really spoke to them. So
He spoke to them. Do you think he was speaking to any of the rest of us? I don't think so.
Well, that's my question for you. What were the moments that you felt like were sort of slaps in Democrats' face?
For example, I think you must know that most of us do not support school vouchers, but with his education secretary sitting there, he wants us to fund school vouchers so that the young people in our country do not have to go to those horrible government schools, which are called private schools, which I don't know about you, but I went to public schools, I should say. So, he talked to his base, went after sanctuary cities, and certainly he was speaking to the Republicans. But again, you could tell by the reaction that it was a very divided audience. And so this is not a speech that brought anybody together.
So he only sort of obliquely mentioned impeachment. He didn't mention it directly. He just talked about sort of being productive and getting things done, which is sort of a smack.
No, but you know what he considers getting things done? Packing our courts with the most conservative, ideologically driven judges. And so he was very proud of that. And he and Mitch McConnell are hand in glove to pack the courts with even more of these Federalist Society-picked judges. Not anything that I can shout from the rooftops as a great thing for the American people.
So what did you make? Speaker Pelosi tore up the speech at the end, and we did see some of the House Democrats walk out in the middle of the speech. What's your response to that?
I think that we were hoping, but why should we expect anything from this president except a very partisan speech to his base and to the Republicans in the audience? And so we're sitting there, and thankfully I thought it was a pretty short speech, and he stuck to his remarks, thank goodness. So fine.
So what did he say that you
mercifully short?
besides the brevity of it, what did the president say that appealed to you? Anything?
The thing about the president is even if he says things that we normally would consider good, such as infrastructure, he never follows through. And so you sit there, and after 3 years, knowing that pretty much anything he says, you don't know what he'll really follow through on, what he really believes in, because he's totally changeable. So you sit there going, well, I wonder, but it's very clear that he speaks to the base. The Second Amendment, that remains strong. Going after late-term abortions, going after sanctuary cities, going after immigrants. Those are just his usual talking points. This was not a speech that inspired us to think that he's going to bring together a very, in my view, divided country, and divided in many reasons because of him and the kind of voice that he's brought to the White House.
Senator Mazie Hirono, thank you so much for talking with us. Appreciate your time. So we are getting some responses here, some perspectives on what members of Congress are thinking. No surprise, the Republicans in favor, Democrats with concerns. Rhonda.
We have now with us Representative Carolyn Maloney, who is also the oversight chair. You took over after the passing of Elijah Cummings. Tell me what you thought of the president's speech today.
Well, I thought it was a lot of reality television with a lot of drama, but actions speak louder than words. When he talked about wanting to cover pre-existing conditions, well, he could stop supporting the Texas law that removes pre-existing conditions that is now in the courts. And when he wanted to lower drug prices, he could support H.R. 3, which would negotiate lower drug prices, one of the things he ran on. And the infrastructure, he keeps talking about it. I'd like to see that infrastructure. But I was pleased that he did sign into law one of the bills I authored that came out of the committee, paid leave for the birth of a child. And we were only 2 countries in the whole world that did not provide paid parental leave. Now that's covered. I'm pleased he mentioned it, but the bill was wider. It covered medical leave for families, and we have that bill in again, and hopefully we can build on that and expand that. As a former teacher, I have long supported vocational education. I think that's the right move in the right direction. But if he wants equality, he should have come out for the Equal Rights Amendment.
You're wearing your pins?
It was just ratified in Virginia. We will be passing a bill that will call upon the country to recognize the 38 states that ratified it. And I'm proud that Delegate Jennifer Foy is with us, who was the sponsor of the Equal Rights Amendment in Virginia that led to that final ratification. She was my special guest tonight, and I'm so proud of her leadership and that we are going to finally get it done because of the work done in Virginia. Thank you, Jennifer. Thank you.
Now, you are the chair of one of the committees that led the investigation in the impeachment. What's next for the Oversight Committee right now after we have this vote where presumably the Senate will acquit President Trump? What's next for Oversight right now?
Well, we are continuing our investigations this week. While everyone's focused on impeachment, we are focused on 4 areas in the law where the president has rolled back protections for children. And we hope to put that back with a law to protect them in both housing and nutrition, cutting programs that aid them. Next week, we're having a hearing with the Census Director on getting a full and accurate count, focusing on the census. We had a hearing on hate crimes last week and passed the Never Forget Holocaust Education Plan that would create a centralized database on ways to combat hate and intolerance and understanding of the Holocaust. We hope to pass that through the Senate, and we are going to be passing in the week of February 10th, not only the Equal Rights Amendment. It's hard to empower women if you don't even recognize them, but a women's museum on the Mall, first in history. We are continuing our hearings on the greedy impact on drug prices and a whole series on the high cost of drugs and what we should do.
Which was something that the president talked about today.
We have a bill that would do that, so get behind it and pass it. He ran on let's negotiate lower prices like they do at the VA and other countries do. We should do that here. So we're working on that, and we're working on numerous areas. We're calling in all the directors of the agencies. Betsy DeVos has turned us down several times.
So it sounds like you guys are going to be very busy in the next few months.
She was campaigning and saying she couldn't come to the hearings.
I'm sorry, Representative Maloney, I have to cut you off because we have a next thing to move to.
We've got a lot to do and not enough time.
Right. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right.
And we're watching a lot of milling about here in Statuary Hall as members of Congress talk to the media and give their 2 cents on just how the president's speech went tonight. It is a moment for everyone to evaluate and be able to take home a message to their constituents. And this, in some ways, Rhonda, is a continuation of the weeks of drama kicking off the 2020 campaign. We saw the Iowa caucuses on Monday night, and as we've talked about, it wasn't just Democrats who were in contention there. President Trump was as well, although, as you said earlier, 97% of caucusing going to him on the Republican side. But the president is aware, of course, that this is a moment that he can really kick his campaign into gear, and Republicans know that too. Rhonda, we all wondered if President Trump would talk about impeachment directly tonight. And what we're hearing from the White House is that he wants to talk about it tomorrow. And tomorrow, of course, will be at 4 o'clock. Drama will unfold here in these final moments of the impeachment process.
Yeah, and politically that may make sense. What we just saw is a lot of pomp and circumstance. It is a part of the institution of Congress and the presidency. So maybe this was not the right place, not the right climate to discuss impeachment. But after that vote, and he's able to give a full response to the vote, that
also
makes more
just
sense.
dangerous in many ways because it would put these moderate Republicans who are criticizing the process and partisanship. If President Trump got up here tonight and gave like a scathing, emotional, Democrats would paint it as like unhinged speech about impeachment, it would be harder for those moderate Republicans to sort of stick to their talking points. There was sort of an oblique reference though to impeachment tonight, so let's watch some of the president's speech. This could be interpreted as a reference to impeachment. Watch this.
Members of Congress, we must never forget that the only victories that matter in Washington are victories that deliver for the American people. The people are the heart of our country. Their dreams are the soul of our country, and their love is what powers and sustains our country. We must always remember that our job is to put America first.
Those expressions are priceless, Rhonda, as the camera pans the room to see how Democrats were reacting to that.
Yeah, picture says 1,000 words. That's what that was all about. And that was from the beginning. I remember when President Trump, when he specifically in those first 15 minutes started talking about minorities were doing better under his administration and the economy was doing so well and there was job growth and unemployment rate is down. I did see members across the board in the Democratic Party. They seemed like they weren't listening to that. In fact, Majority Whip Clyburn actually was kind of looking down and shaking his head when the president kept saying that, the economy is better than any other administration before. So it's comments like those where you see Democrats, they really can't really get behind that because they've been fighting a lot of his policy here on the Hill, and those comments just aren't something that are going to resonate with them.
Yeah, Rhonda, even from the beginning, though, there was a question of how Speaker Pelosi would greet the president, and we saw Speaker Pelosi try to sort of reach out her hand and shake the president's hand, and he just blew right past her. And we don't know if that was intentional or not, but it was a moment of, once again, where that image really said a lot, and sort of an awkward moment of back and forth. You can see there as the president first arrived, and he's giving copies of the speech to the vice president and the speaker.
Yeah, you can see. I mean, it could have been that he just is passing the speech and turns around. We don't know exactly, but it was a moment to start the whole night off.
Start the whole night. I do want to point out that you might have heard some disturbance in the chamber, and at one point Speaker Pelosi was like looking over in the balcony and almost talking, and we were all wondering what exactly was going on. Well, our colleagues have reported that out. This is from Paul Kane. This was when President Trump was talking about the Second Amendment and gun rights, and Congresswoman Lucy McBath, the Democrat of Georgia, of course her son, a 17-year-old son, was killed back in 2012 in gun violence. She stood silently during the president's remarks, Rhonda. And then right after that, Fred Guttenberg, who was one of the guests of the Democrats, one of the guests of Speaker Pelosi, his child was killed in the Parkland school shooting. He stood up and said, "My child," and started shouting. And so he was escorted out of the chamber. At that point, some other Democrats in the House got up and left.
I mean, that's a hard issue. Lucy McBath, she ran on gun control. She's a Democrat from Georgia, and she actually fills the seat that Newt Gingrich once filled. So she's from a very red district, but she ran on gun control because she has that personal experience with losing her son to guns. And I've interviewed her and talked about that with her. And, the Parkland dad, I mean, these feelings are so raw. So when you bring that up, it is sort of hard probably for them to hear. And the fact that Congress has really not moved on gun control this whole term yet. That's been a point where they have talked about it. They have had multiple hearings in the Judiciary Committee, but no movement on any of that legislation regarding guns.
Everyone invites guests, both to give the guests the experience of being a State of the Union, but also to symbolize something, to express something, and to have Fred Guttenberg there is a symbol of Democrats' concerns about gun control. President Trump had many symbolic moments tonight. These made-for-TV moments where, as we talked about, we saw a soldier reunited with his family. You know, we saw a veteran who had problems with drug abuse now saying that he was turning his life around. One of those moments was pinning the Medal of Freedom on Rush Limbaugh, who has cancer. And there was, I have to point out, some irony there because Melania Trump did the pinning on of the medal. She has the Be Best anti-bullying campaign. I still remember when Rush Limbaugh was bullying Chelsea Clinton when she was a teenager, when on his show he was making fun of her and comparing her to a dog. So we're seeing the evolution here of the embrace of Republicans. He's always been in the Republicans' corner. He's been a gadfly at times, but President Trump supporting him, loves him. Rush Limbaugh, love goes the same way. And you saw Republicans give him a standing ovation tonight, and Melania Trump pin that medal on him. Melania Trump pin that medal on him.
Right. That was an interesting moment as well because you could see, Democrats, did they want to stand up? He, of course, is ill with terminal cancer, and that's something that everyone can, be sympathetic toward, but he is a polarizing figure and has been throughout his career. So I noticed that Nancy Pelosi, she seemed to sort of smile but did not stand or clap or give any sort of overt reaction to that Medal of Honor.
Whereas there were other moments when, like, the Tuskegee Airmen was there,
and they made him stand up 3 times. He's 100 years old.
And a member of his family, one of his descendants being there. Like, there are those moments where, like, everyone gets up and claps. But, Rhonda, the ultimate feeling tonight is, while Republicans are happy with the speech, there's a lot of divisiveness here. And as we heard members of the Senate criticize their partisanship as they bemoaned this impeachment process, we saw even more of it on display here tonight.
Yeah. I mean, this is sort of the precursor and the eve of tomorrow's vote. That vote has been hanging over the chamber and this area all night. I think it's something that has been on the back of everyone's mind that we have this vote tomorrow. Democrats know which way it's going to go, and now there's sort of this, what do we do next? And as I was just speaking to Carolyn Maloney, she's like, we're going to continue investigating, and she gave the whole list of things that they plan to look into. Her committee is tasked with looking into government oversight, White House oversight. So I don't think House Democrats are going to stop.
Well, from the kickoff of the 2020 election to State of the Union to the closure of the impeachment trial, it is quite the week in national politics. Thank you so much for joining us in the Washington Post this evening. I'm Libby Casey. Rhonda Colvin, thank you so much. Rhonda will be back here tomorrow on Capitol Hill. We'll be watching this final phase of the impeachment trial. We'll be live at 3 o'clock Eastern Time. That final vote scheduled for 4 o'clock on these 2 articles and whether or not to remove the president from office. So we'll bring that to you live. We're also covering the primary season, so we'll be in New Hampshire next week doing that live as well. I'd encourage you to take a moment and subscribe to support the Washington Post journalism and also get notified about when we do these live broadcasts. We were talking, Rhonda, about a picture being worth 1,000 words. You said it so well, and it's a classic saying, and it's so true. Let's look at one of the moments of tonight, a moment that will certainly be marked as iconic here.
I mean, there have been so many Nancy Pelosi pictures this year. The one where she's pointing at Trump in that negotiation room at the White House and then leaves. Now this says a lot. This makes a lot of sense for how Democrats have been doing this investigation for the last few weeks, and it kind of culminated tonight and tomorrow with this vote. So a very telling picture. This is historic.
And reacting to some of the president's phrases, criticizing Democrats as socialists, talking about illegal aliens, his phrasing for immigrants, that picture says a lot in terms of how the reaction is here on Capitol Hill this evening. Once again, I'm Libby. Rhonda, thank you, and we thank you from all of us here at the Washington Post. Have a good night.